when conservative media was running with the story about how the Chinese Communist Party was running secret biolabs in the United States? Well, oops, it was actually revealed that it was the Israelis that was doing it. Wait, where is all the conservative outrage now? Israeli property manager Ori Solomon was arrested for illegally running a secret biolab out of Las Vegas that was researching and developing extremely dangerous pathogens. All the conservative influencers who claimed that China was planning on building secret biolabs in the United States are completely quiet now that it was exposed as an Israeli plot. Was Israel planning a false flag biological attack on Americans that they plan to pin on Iran, China, or any other enemy of the Zionist regime? Either way, this was extremely dangerous, and the person responsible must be stopped, and this organization must be looked into. And this bioterrorist was just released by a judge that was appointed by the Trump administration in 2019. And you guessed it, the judge who released this bioterrorist is of Jewish descent whose family has ties to Israel. Every single fucking time. This story hits a bit different when you remember all the Jewish supremacists who threatened America with plagues and misfortune if they ever abandoned the state of Israel.
Societies that fail to protect their Jews, or worse, turn against them, often hasten their own decline. Ancient Egypt enslaved the Jews, oppressed them harshly, and defied their cries for freedom, only to be broken by devastating plagues that struck at the heart of its power. America's extraordinary success flows from its historic embrace of Judeo-Christian values. I offer my assistance to this commission and the White House, recommendations, implementation, whatever is needed. This is the hill I am willing to die on. I'm Yisrael Chai.
Really sounds like a threat now, doesn't it? The UK is actively charging activists and threatening them with insane prison sentences for opposing Israeli genocide. Patty Friend is a 25-year-old law student that is facing 14 years in prison in the UK for simply setting up and organizing pro-Palestinian protests and events. The UK is charging Patty Friend with actively supporting terrorist organizations using their extremely draconian Terrorism Act law. To be clear, terrorism is a propaganda word, and the Terrorism Act is being used to implement fascism and protect the UK ruling class from being held accountable for their crimes. It's a violation of UK law and international law for the UK government to provide support and send weapons to a country that they know is committing genocide and committing war crimes. So the UK government supporting the genocidal state of Israel makes the ruling class criminals, not the ordinary people who protest their illegal action. So the UK is sending their peace-loving, law-abiding citizens to prison for simply opposing the genocidal crimes of the ruling class. Palestinians have an internationally recognized right of armed resistance against their genocidal occupiers, and supporting them does not mean you are supporting terrorism. You guys see how the ruling class in the West completely distort international law in order to serve their genocidal interests, and then they imprison anyone in their country who refuses to go along with it? Are people in the West okay with their society descending into a full-fledged fascist police state simply to protect the child killers in Israel?
What's poppin'? My friends, my family, how you guys doing? Thank you for joining me live. You guys know I'm always in the lab cooking. We have a banger for you guys today. We have my friend Kshama. Sawant, she will be joining us here very soon. There's still a lot to discuss. There are a lot of people on the left that owe me an apology because Zohran Mamdani has abandoned his base faster than anyone could have possibly imagined. I've seen it coming, though. We're going to discuss that when Kshama joins us. Also, there's the Munich Security Council, and AOC and Matt Duss is joining to essentially pitch AOC 2028 to the world, and AOC's foreign policy is just as deranged as you could possibly imagine. So we're going to break that down as well. But first, I have to start here because AOC at the Munich Security Conference was essentially endorsing United States imperialism as a way to control authoritarianism. Like, bro, when you scratch these democratic socialists, a fascist bleeds out everywhere. It was truly deranged, so we can get to that here later. Something that AOC would not call out, as she talks about authoritarianism and she fearmongers over Putin and Russia, she never discusses the fascism of Europe and the UK, where in order to cover up the crimes of the UK ruling class, because it's against UK law and international law for them to provide support, arms, and munitions to a country that is committing a genocide. The UK government, they will send out these bullshit warnings like, hey, we condemn Israel for annexing the West Bank. We condemn Israel for using starvation as a tool of war, as they continue to send Israel weapons and give them everything they need in order to accomplish their genocidal agenda. Not only is this illegal on the international stage, this violates UK law. So this is another example of how the West is ruled by criminal scumbags. And what makes these criminal scumbags even worse is how they weaponize the law and implement full-fledged fascism to punish the best people of their society because they view them as a threat. Now think about that. The UK is threatening to send Patty Friend, and this is the big story, which I hope will be overturned after this ruling. But the ban on Palestine action is still in practice today, as Keir Starmer and the Labour government seeks to appeal the decision of the court. But this guy was a 25-year-old law student, fam, a law-abiding citizen. Let me see if I can find headline to show you guys. I just covered it. This man he's not a threat. Here it is. Here's a video. I don't like showing Instagram videos. But this is Patty Friend.
26-year-old Patty Friend is accused of helping organize the protests on behalf of Defend Our Juries. He was arrested under the Terrorism Act after a dawn raid of his home.
Come on, man. How is that not textbook fascism? So this is a law-abiding citizen, and I would argue the best among us, someone who is holding the ruling class accountable, someone who is showing solidarity with the most disenfranchised population in the world, the Palestinians in Gaza. But they were treating him like a hardcore, stone-cold criminal because he opposes the foreign policy of the ruling class. How is this not the height of quote-unquote authoritarianism? But if you was to ask AOC what she thinks authoritarianism is, the UK never doesn't play a part of that equation at all for her. She discusses Russia as authoritarian. You guys saw Zohran Mamdani condemn Cuba and Venezuela as authoritarian right when the establishment needed them to. Meanwhile, you have the ruling class in the UK that is weaponizing the law and flexing it to its extremes to go after people in their own population that is holding them accountable for their crimes. 14 years, not to a murderer, not to a pedophile, to someone who's engaging in what you would think is their patriotic duty of holding their government accountable. And that's why I'm glad to see I was doing a follow-up on this story today and I saw that Keir Starmer and the Jewish supremacist fascists in the UK, they took a gigantic L when their high court ruled that the ban on Palestine action is unconstitutional. And you guys see what they said? In a blow to Starmer, in a blow to Keir Starmer, they're saying. In a blow to Keir Starmer, his fascism was rejected. Can you imagine being that deranged? That it's a political loss for you. They're like, oh my God, this is a political L for Keir Starmer. He's not allowed to implement fascism. Oh man, I wish I could find. I need to find. There was all these tweets from Labor MPs who support Starmer. All these Jewish supremacists. Fuck, I need to find this. Damn, I wish I saved this. There are these quotes of these Jewish supremacist Zionist politicians in the UK completely melting down over this decision. Like here's Amnesty UK covering this. The High Court has ruled the prosecution of Palestine action was unlawful. Today, human rights won. Today, we all won. The court was clear the Home Secretary can't reach for the nuclear option. Fam, they had people in the UK that was on hunger strikes because they was locked behind bars for over a year without any due process. And I was watching. There was no Democrats that was like, I condemn the UK for their fascist policies of keeping political prisoners for people who stand up for Palestine. No one in the progressive left, nobody in the Democratic sphere. There are fascists who support this via silence. Man, I really wish I could find. There's another person melting down. I really would. There was this labor leader who was fucking melting down. I really wish I saved it. But this is a big blow to the Zionist fascist movement and a big victory that temporarily get the boot off the neck of the Palestinian organizers in the UK. Gigantic win. Oh man, I really wish I could find. I might do a segment on it later. Yeah, the number of people killed by Palestine action 0. The number of people killed by the IDF, way more than that, but in the tens of thousands. This is my friend Rame Aldewan. She was a victim of the fascism in the UK that stripped her of her medical license, attacked her livelihood. She was arrested multiple times. She said a huge victory. High Court ruled that Palestine action ban is unlawful. The UK Israeli Jewish lobby and subverted state traitors are in meltdown mode. They want to appeal because they have no regard for life or the rule of law. The people won today. The people always win. Very well said. I really wish I could find some more reactions, but I'm blocked by a lot of these establishment accounts. Yeah, see, there's a lot of celebration. Breaking, we won. This is a bit in the era where there's a lot to be pessimistic about. I'm very glad to see this victory for the UK. Either way, the reaction of the Starmer government is they trying to appeal this. They're fighting their hardest to make sure that Jewish supremacy is law of the land. So they're not handling this well. I wish I could find some more. Let's see if I can find some more reactions to this. Like here's an example of someone melting down here. Here's Nigel Farage, the fake ass right wing populist, and Nigel Farage is one of the people who was exposed more than anyone else because there are a lot of people on the right that believe that Nigel Farage is UK first, MAGA, Jason. No, he's literally just a Zionist, and there are a lot of people on the far right who are just now realizing that their entire politics have been dictated by the Epstein Zionist class, and Nigel Farage and the quote-unquote far right, who their entire politics is just hating immigrants, deflecting class war, and convincing people that immigrants are their problem. And he's like the biggest Zionist. He's support of Zionist censorship. He says that UK has been taken over by terrorist supporters because we don't support the child-killing, pro-rape state of Israel. So the entire right-wing ideology has been completely exposed. Here's Nigel Farage exposing himself. Yet another example of how in Britain today, if you're a left-wing group that hates our country, attacks our police officers, and damages our armed forces, you can break the law and get away with it. You guys see how their twisted version of patriotism is essentially supporting the crimes of the ruling class? Isn't that sick? This is my friend Rame here. According to Nigel Farage and all these white boys, you're a patriot if you support Henry Kissinger and his plan for world domination. If you support the Atlantic Council in their imperialist projects, you're a patriot. But if you want to hold the war criminals in your government accountable, they say you hate your country. You guys see the mindsets of the elites. Your patriotism is not gauged on how you treat your fellow citizen. It's not gauged on how much you want to see your fellow citizens succeed. It's all based on whether you support the agenda of the elites. It's such a barbaric ideology and way to view the world. Because this is the true treasonous behavior that Nigel Farage and the far right has no problem with. How Israel is ramping up its lobbying of Reform UK. Nigel Farage's party launching Reform Jewish Alliance and Friends of Israel groups. So colluding with genocidal psychopaths in a foreign country, that's not treasonous, but aligning with a government that is locking up your own citizens and neighbors for 15 years for opposing genocide, that's patriotic? Someone please explain to me how these people think. Don't worry, guys. We have Kshama. She will be joining us around the 30-minute mark of this stream. I still have a few more stories from Israel I want to cover. I just want to. I was trying to find some more reactions to this. I think this is one of the ones I was looking for. This is one of the MPs that was melting down. This traitors. Like, she one of the people in the UK, just like Keir Starmer, who started off as a pro-Palestinian activist. And now she's an MP who is promoting fascism against the people that she used to organize with. It's truly sick. Like, the court acknowledged that Palestine Action has carried out acts of terrorism. Once again, whatever that means. Because Israel bombing hospitals is an act of terrorism. Israel murdering journalists, including targeting journalists at their homes, that's an act of terrorism. Opposing them and doing it by any means necessary, which is outlined via the Geneva Conventions, which is the duty of every single law-abiding citizen when it comes to facing genocide, that we all must do everything to oppose that. That's not terrorism. But you guys see how the West used terrorism as a propaganda word in order to justify their fascism? No one in the West should have any, especially on the left, no one should ever legitimize what they call and what they define as a terrorist. Like, supporting the Palestinian cause is not the same as supporting Palestine Action. The government's proscription followed a rigorous process endorsed by Parliament. I will fight this judgment in the Court of Appeal. So this person who is advocating for more Jewish fascism, you guys see how this person used to be part of the pro-Palestine movement? This is a pattern that people who've been following this story of Israeli genocide and the Palestinian struggle for longer than October 7th. It's a similar pattern that emerges where people make their career on the left supporting Palestine, and then the second that they achieve power, they immediately flip and become a Zio-fascist. Fam, we are seeing the same thing from Zohran Mamdani, by the way. Standing with the Palestinian people, but supporting and legitimizing the talking points that are used to implement fascist censorship. It is Zohran Mamdani who passed a resolution banning the protest of genocidal Zionists who sell off Palestinian land. It's the people who pretend to support Palestine who tend to be their biggest enemy. And that's what everyone is calling out this shameful genocidal traitor. You guys see how you don't change power once you quote unquote infiltrate it. It confirms it contorts and completely changes your ideology, especially if you're in pursuit of maintaining that power, which many of these people are. Hear my friend Rame again. You will live with shame forever. You walk around with a necklace that says Allah, yet you engage in injustice and Palestinian blood is dripping off your hands. The people will win just like they did today, God willing. So this MP who support this fascist crackdown against Palestinian protesters, she's a Muslim Zionist. According to my friend Rame, she has a necklace of Allah that she wears everywhere. You guys see how the system of Jewish supremacy, the system of Zionism, it needs complicity from traitors, the Christian Zionist traitors in the United States and the West, and it needs the Muslim Zionist traitors all over Europe and the Gulf states in order to maintain its power. So that's why I have no problem. You guys know I have no problem criticizing Judaism and Jewish supremacy. But this is why I lay this is why the focus must be on class warfare. Because people who want to wine and dine, be part of the capitalist class, they will side with Jewish supremacy and Zionism in order to maintain their orbit of power. It doesn't matter if they're fucking Christian. It doesn't matter if they're Muslim. Class interest trumps all. And then the people who betray their own group, they will then point to the Bible and use the Bible or in the religious books to justify it. You know what I mean? That's the Black Congressional Caucus in a nutshell. So I think I hold those same thoughts at the same time. I maintain a lot of criticism of Jewish institutions, not afraid to quote unquote name the Jew, while at the same time not reducing the scourge of Zionism on just the Jewish supremacists. That's a system of imperialism. Do you guys agree? I think I can hold both thoughts at the same time. And that's what many people who are critical of Jewish supremacy on the right fails to do. And that would mean people on the left who refuse to hold Talmudic values accountable. That's what they fail to do. Because just because Christian Zionists and Muslim Zionists allow Jewish supremacists to hijack their religion, that doesn't, just because Christian Zionists and Muslim Zionists help, that doesn't excuse Jewish institutions from their complicity in allowing their religion to be hijacked by monsters. I said it before, not my job to do PR for Jewish supremacists. So this is what the UK is enabling. It is wild to realize that all these quote-unquote human rights organizations are nothing but Zionist fronts that have been exposed with all these fake-ass USAID human rights organizations claiming that tens of thousands. Let me on this Kshama, let me see what she's saying here. One second. Yeah. All right. I'll send it again.
Okay. Thanks so much.
All right.
Talk
Cool.
to you soon.
Yep. That was Kshama. I'm gonna resend the link to her. Here we go. So I'm just communicating with our guest. Kshama about to join us here very soon. Let me know if that link works. All right. All right, let me quickly cover this. I kind of lost my train of thought. That was Kshama who called me. We are bring Kshama on the stream here soon. But let me cover this because this reveals how human rights organizations all over the world are essentially Zionist ops. That if their numbers, I was saying how there are these fake human rights organizers that say, "Hey man, we got sources that says that nearly 50,000 people die in Iran." There were some Zionists that was explaining how there was like 80,000 dead. That number changes every time. And another organization that was completely exposed was the Committee to Protect Journalists, who is now scrapping, and this is a great report by the Electronic Intifada. Those whistleblowers who exposed how they are not going to release their list of I don't know what's going on with this link. All right, Kshama, let me send this to you. Damn it. All right, sorry guys. I'll try to get Kshama in here real quick. I think we're having a tech issue. Just 1 second, guys. Bear with me 1 second. I'm not sure why Shama's having a hard time opening the link. I'm trying to fix this for her. Hold on 1 second, guys. Oh, Jesus. Yeah, what's up, my friend? I want to go down to Seattle to help Kshama some way because she's forming a coalition fighting against the Zionists and the Democratic Party. Adam Smith. I really hope this works. All right. I'm sorry. This is what happens when you produce your shows alone too. 1 second. Sorry guys. I'm breaking my train of thought. Just trying to make sure Kshama gets here on time with no problems. Yeah, Rome is okay. The police is always fucking with Rome, but he's okay. I'll let him tell the story, but I think he's good. So you guys realize that Israel murdered more journalists that have been murdered than any conflict over the last 30 years. Yeah, I think we got Kshama coming in now. And when you look at the data, there was Israel that murdered people from CBS, and Bari Weiss, who controls CBS, refused to condemn Israel despite her own journalists being murdered. And the damning stat I brought this up in my hotspot video. Around 48% of the journalists that Israel murdered, they was murdered in their own home. So it wasn't like they can say it was a friend, it was a stray bullet, or we bombed the wrong target and he was just caught up in the friendly fire, or this person was working with Hamas, and this was the excuse they usually use. They said, "Oh, this person was working with Hamas," and if they wasn't working with Hamas, then they never got caught up in Israeli fire that murder. They can't even use that as an excuse because they purposely track Palestinian journalists, wait till they come home, and then murder them and their entire family. I know a lot of people like to use historical examples, like, man, that's some Nazi ass shit, man. Fam, there's not even an historical example that we can compare Israeli actions to, of them straight up executing journalists in their own home. And because of this is why the Committee to Protect Journalists scrapped their impunity index because Israel was going to be listed number one as the biggest threat to journalists around the world. So instead of releasing the index that will expose Israel as this giant threat to journalism, the CPJ scrapped the index in order to protect Israel. And as Ali points out, this is the same thing that happened when Human Rights Watch refused to release a report that claimed that Israel blocking Palestinians' right to return is a crime against humanity, and they refused to condemn that. So you guys see how these quote unquote human rights organizations all around the world seems to be hijacked by Zionist interest? Here's my last headline. I want to bring Kshama in for her thoughts on this. We have candidate running against Alex Smith, socialist organizer, founder of Worker Strike Back, that will be joining us here very soon. But I covered this in great detail. This was before October 7th. Israel been mass murdering journalists. They murdered a Palestinian American journalist, Shireen Abdul Akleh, and the Biden administration actively covered it up. You guys remember how I covered this nonstop? No one, especially all the Biden supporting progressives, they didn't cover this. And now, since they murdered Shireen Abdul Akleh, Israel has imprisoned Shireen's partner, one of the journalists who was on the ground who witnessed Israel's assassination of her. They kidnapped him from his home, and they are holding him in a torture prison cell without any due process, and that's where he's been for over a year. And here's the headline. I'll bring Kshama after this. Why did Israel jail journalists who witnessed Shireen Abdul Akleh's killing? So they essentially kidnapped this guy. He's been in a torture facility with no accountability and no updates on his future. And this is what they're doing in journalists all the time. Meanwhile, human rights organizations who claim to stand up for journalists are not doing anything, or they are refusing to even name Israel as a problem on this. So to get her thoughts on this issue and many more, it's great to have her back on again. We have founder of Worker Strike Back, fantastic socialist organizer and candidate running against Alex Smith for Congress. Thank you for joining us tonight, Kshama Sawant. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me, Nick. Hope you're well.
I'm doing pretty well. We have a lot to discuss today. We're going to get to the Zohran Mamdani disappointment because he's been a disappointment in lightning speed. And I don't know how many apologies you received from the DSA. I don't think you're going to get a lot. I don't think they're coming anytime soon. But there's going to be a lot of apologies that we need to receive after Zohran's horrific decisions, endorsing Kathy Hochul and many others. We're going to get to that. I'm going to cover AOC and her insane foreign policy that was exposed during the Munich Security Conference. We're going to get to that very soon as well. But before I get started on that, I was covering how Israel, they are really making history in the way they're persecuting journalists. Once again, there's not even an historical equivalent for what they're doing. Hunting down journalists in their own home, banning journalists from even documenting what is happening in Gaza. So Israelis would claim that you're engaging in blood libel, Kshama, if you accuse them of committing genocide. Meanwhile, they won't allow any international journalists in Gaza that could document Israeli actions. That would apparently, wouldn't that let them off the hook if you're so innocent of genocide? That alone is a crime against journalism, the blocking of journalists in the war zone. Now you have these human rights organizers who are protecting Israel and refuse to name them as the biggest threat to journalism. Do you have any reaction to this story and the horrific actions we see in Israel engage in Gaza, Kshama? Thank you for joining us here tonight.
Thank you for having me, Nick. Yes, I mean, this is just horror upon horror and more layers being revealed of the horrific nature of the Israeli state. And as you and I have talked many times before, it really also is ultimately, it's not just the Israeli state, because the Israeli state exists at the behest of US imperialism and Western imperialism and US and Western capitalism as a whole. And it's capitalism that requires imperialism as part and parcel of its character, globally. And so it is absolutely horrific. I think one thing to add here, in addition to what you were already saying, Nick, is the complete absence of any meaningful response by the American labor leadership. I mean, there are unions that protect journalists, that protect writers, that protect workers in general, not to mention in the context of a genocide, in the context of completely horrific bloodshed. And so what's resounding to me is the silence. I mean, it's a crescendo. The silence of the labor leadership in the United States is really speaking volumes of how just tragic and what a travesty it is, the state of the labor movement leadership today. And I think there's a lot to get into that, not only in relation to the genocide, but I think the genocide is a key example of the complete failure and really the rottenness of the labor leadership today, as is their absence on any kind of response to ICE. Yeah, I was just about to mention ICE, and I hope that later in this program, Nick, we can go much more into this question about what they actually did, what the labor leadership did in Minneapolis. But going back to the question of Israel, I mean, it is incredible the number of journalists that have been slaughtered. I mean, this is unprecedented. There's been no war, as to my understanding. You should correct me if I'm wrong, but to my understanding, there's been no war that, at least in any recent history, where not only this many journalists have been killed, murdered, but that they've been targeted. As you said, it's not like many of them were even covering any stories at the time that they were killed. They were killed when they were asleep. They were killed in their tents where they were with their sheltering with their families. They were in their homes, and they were specifically targeted. And let's not forget all the corporations and the billionaires who own these corporations, who profit from this type of so-called, quote unquote, intelligence. Like, how does the Israeli military know where all these people live at where they are at any given moment? So it's companies like Palantir and billionaires like Alexander Karp and Peter Thiel and Joe Lonsdale. These people are making money hand over fist at the expense of not only Palestinian people, but journalists as a whole. Journalists were showing lots of courage. And just one other thing I wanted to point out in terms of this, the growing information about the horrors that the Israeli state is engaging in. Yeah, I'm not sure if you saw this Al Jazeera story, Nick, where it's from the 10th of this month, where an Al Jazeera investigation revealed that U.S. supplied what are called thermal and thermobaric munitions. They burn at 3,500 degrees Celsius, and they leave no trace of the person whom they've incinerated. Literally, apparently, you can only find traces of blood spray rather, and small fragments of flesh. I mean, this is how unspeakably horrific the Israeli state and the U.S. imperialism that backs it is. And this is because of the Democratic and Republican parties. The guy I'm running against, Democrat Adam Smith, he has voted for tens of billions of dollars for the genocide in Gaza. And this is what this money is buying. This money is buying all these types of dystopian weapons. I mean, when you read about these weapons, you feel like, am I reading a dystopian science fiction novel here? No, but this is actual reality.
Yeah, this is one of the things I'm gonna show you guys. This is what Kshama is referencing here. This is one of the things that Palestinians was telling the world about for years, even before October 7th, even before their final solution against the Palestinian people. It's been a long time open secret how Palestinians was always the guinea pigs of war. How the West would send weapons to Israel and they use the Palestinians to test it on. The dirty secret of Israel's weapon exports. They're tested on the Palestinians. So Gaza always was used as this testing ground. You guys see they just openly brag about it. After 2 years of war, Israeli weapons makers showcased their new tech. They're like, look at our new genocidal tech, and they use it as a showcase. They use footage of Gaza as a way to sell more arms and munitions. Because as I said many times before, the United States government is a criminal enterprise that engages in arms dealing as an institutional policy, the same way they engage in human trafficking and sex trafficking institutionally. That's what ICE is all about. Ask them where all those people in Alligator Alcatraz went, by the way. You had all these people that, remember the Florida ICE facility, Alligator Alcatraz? There was like dozens of people that just gone missing. Now we know that Epstein classes openly traffics these people. And I want you to hammer this point home more, because you've been on top of this issue, and this is something that I've been thinking about for a long time, because we've been criticizing the labor aristocracy and their silence in the face of fascism being implemented is so deafening. And like, it's bad when you even have Jacobin that called you. I wanted to find an article quickly about this, and I found Jacobin. Even the Social Democrats are like, "Hey, labor, what the hell are you guys doing?" Look, why labor unions can't ignore ICE. So, Kshama, I want you to speak more on this before we continue. We're gonna get to AOC and the Munich Security Council here next. We can get to some more foreign policy here soon. But I want you to speak more on this and what you view, or at least what I view. Here's just another article, just show you guys some more people calling this out as a failure of labor leadership. Why aren't the largest U.S. labor unions calling a general strike against ICE? You would think, and I feel like this not as being our expectations being so high. We have a fascist pedophile in charge that created a paramilitary that is executing Americans that are engaging in their free speech rights. If there's any issue that we engage in a general strike over, like this hypothetically speaking, if there's any issue you would form a general strike over, wouldn't it be that, right? So, Kshama, do you have anything else you want to speak on regarding what you describe? And I love that you bring this up, the failure of labor leadership.
Yeah, I mean, as I said before, there have been any number of reasons why the American labor leadership should have organized strike actions to begin with, leading to a general strike, but they haven't done anything. In fact, they have certainly not done any general strike, no individual strike actions, even local strike actions, and not even responsible for actually calling for mass protests. The only thing that they have done is partner with the Democratic Party, with the Progressive Democrats, in calling for the No Kings protest. But we all know what No Kings is. No Kings is simply a release valve kind of protest, where the only purpose of calling that protest is to is the Democratic Party understands that there's so much anger bubbling from below. They need to give it some sort of outlet, but it has to be very safe, meaning no threat to the Democratic Party in any shape or form. So No Kings protests happen. They already, 2 of them have happened, have been some of the largest single day protests in US history. Millions of people have come out. There is so much anger in society, in American society. But when you go to the No Kings protest, what are you told? What is the message of the protest? There's no next steps. There's no actually even building for a larger protest or something like that in the next couple of weeks or anything like that. But most criminally, they are very clear. Anybody who goes to the No Kings protest, the message that they hear is vote blue in the midterm elections, vote for Democrats. And this story, this complete concoction is peddled over and over again. Like, let's just get one more Democrat elected. Oh, maybe we'll get the Democratic majority in the House. But what have the Democrats done with the majority in the House? They had Bill Clinton, a Democratic president, and 2 years of Democratic majority in the House and Senate. Then they had Barack Obama, a Democrat, and 2 years of majority in the House and Senate. Then they had Democrat Joe Biden and 2 years of majority in the House and Senate. And yet, what did they do? Far from doing anything for the working class, they actually hurt the working class even further. They are the ones who, alongside Republicans, that have opened the door for Trump to carry out these unprecedented attacks, including the ICE terror. And so if you look at why the combination of the Progressive Democrats and Democratic Party and illusions in them and the labor leadership, why this is such a deadly combination that works against the working class, look at what happened in Minneapolis. We saw Renee Good, peaceful activist and mother, being murdered in broad daylight by ICE. I mean, there is so much anger, Nick, in society right now. It's like dry kindling. People are so eager to fight back. I have never heard so many people talk about a general strike than I'm hearing now. But what happened in Minneapolis? And this is a statement on the labor leadership as a whole in the United States. This is not unique to Minneapolis. I'm just using this as an example because it's a recent example. There was anger when, especially, through all of the ICE terror, Operation Metro Surge, all of that in Minneapolis, but then it reached a real height when Renee Good was brutally murdered in broad daylight. And then there was a real call for mass protests and for a general strike. And on January 23rd, there were mass protests, and there were many progressive organizations that called for that. But what did the labor leadership do? They, for the most part, the big unions did not join the call for even mass protest, let alone strike, on January 23rd. The leaders of the Minneapolis Federation of Teachers, the St. Paul Federation of Educators, the Service Employees International Union, which is a CIU, which most of your viewers know, Amalgamated Transit Union, Local 1005, that's ATU, the transit drivers and mechanics and so on. All of the leadership of all of these unions did everything in their power to avoid organizing a strike. Instead, you know what these union leaders did? It's utterly shameful. They advised their members that if they wanted to take the day off, and it's not a strike, okay? So it's you as an individual worker, if you want to take the day off just in a moralistic gesture as opposed to actually posing a threat to the ruling class, then you should request your boss to quote unquote look the other way. They even discourage the labor federation there in that area, even strongly discourage the idea of a mass sick out, which is sort of a lesser degree than an outright strike, but they still didn't agree to that. And then on top of all of this, Nick, and this is a big part of the story that your viewers should hear about, is that on top of all of this, what happened in Minneapolis, the travesty that happened at the hands of the labor leadership, where there was energy for a general strike, but a general strike didn't happen, is the no strike clauses. And just before I talk about that, I want to be clear. January 23rd was a phenomenal day of protests. My solidarity goes out to every single one of those 100,000 people who walked out in Minneapolis in severe, like dangerously cold weather, and the many hundreds of thousands of us, including myself, who joined in protest nationwide on January 23rd. It was a mass protest, and it did put some pressure on the Trump administration. That, alongside the approval ratings, have really put some pressure on him. But we have to understand that the idea that it was a general strike is completely mistaken, and the labor leadership wants to call that a general strike because they don't want any pressure on them to actually organize a general strike. So they know full well that a mass protest is not a general strike, and yet they have said that. But one of the most scandalous things, and this is what I was coming to, one of the most scandalous things that this has revealed is how no strike clauses have become almost ubiquitous in American labor union contracts. It is one of the most scandalous outcomes of the hollowing out of the militancy of the American labor movement and the loss of class struggle unionism. Class struggle unionism meaning basically leaders who understand that workers' needs and bosses' greed are diametrically opposed to one another. And so most of these unions have no strike clauses because the leadership is so rotten, they haven't fought against them. And they themselves are telling their members, hey, don't forget there's a no strike clause in your contract, so you better not go on strike. This is what the labor leadership was doing behind the scenes. And it is a massive historical irony that as ICE and Trump are murdering workers and are in defiance of even the laws of the capitalist state, these labor leaders are, they're fretting over no strike clauses. They're saying, oh my God, we can't break the law. There's no strike clauses. Let's be clear. There's no illegal strike. There's successful strikes and strikes that haven't succeeded. In fact, workers need to get organized to reject no strike clauses. And I'll just end by saying the most recent and phenomenal example of workers who were told you can't legally go on strike and still did, and they won, were the unionized teachers in West Virginia who went on strike in 2018. This is in a state. West Virginia is a state with right to work laws, meaning it automatically prohibits public sector strikes. And yet these workers went on a wildcat strike, and it had to be a wildcat strike because their own union leadership opposed it. So in order to carry out the strike, the West Virginia teachers overcame the opposition from their own leadership, in addition to having to overcome the opposition from a reactionary Republican controlled state legislature. So, and they won big. So this can be done, but we will need to build alternative leadership and throw out the current labor leadership, which is also why we're building Worker Strike Back.
Absolutely fantastic, Kshama. That's exactly why I stand with you. I think labor, if used as a truly revolutionary tool, can be a powerful mechanism that we can engage with to keep the ruling class and hold the ruling class accountable for their crimes. You're using labor as a weapon in order to extract demands. And what we've seen, and the reason why the United States left have been completely failed, is because the capitalists have infiltrated, hijacked, and completely destroyed and took all the value away from what union organizing and labor organizing is supposed to be about. And it make them completely hollowed out and ineffective. And that's 100% by design. And that's why I reach out to so many different people. You're one of many I want to work with, because we need to really establish a true working class movement where labor is much more militant and form a gigantic socialist working class, anti-Jeffrey Epstein movement to take on the decadent capitalist class. And I think that's why I think we need to support Kshama and her battle against Adam Smith and the Epstein elite. Speaking about the Epstein elite, let's discuss the Munich Security Council. You guys know I'm a nerd in foreign policy. I break down the Munich Security Council almost every year because it's always good to keep our head down and understand what our ops are saying. Like, we got to understand what their plans are, because the Munich Security Council is essentially their imperialist planning meeting. It's where all the imperialists get together and say the quiet part out loud. And here's the BlackRock Prime Minister of Germany. Germany's a full-fledged fascist state. You guys know they're rolling back their pensions. They're taking away their pensions and their health care in order to fund NATO more, in order to prepare for war against Russia. Friedrich Merz in Germany said they're going to step up as the United States retreat from Europe, becoming a militarized state. And this is after their history of Nazism and the fact that Germany is supposed to be a demilitarized state. Germany is remilitarizing. The far right in Japan, and Sane Takaichi, who just won a landslide fake ass election in Japan, they are remilitarizing. And now they meet together in Munich to describe this new world order they're discussing. Here's just one headline: the world's rules-based order no longer exists. Here's Marco Rubio. He warns Europe of a new era of geopolitics. He said we are entering a brand new era. He was describing how the world is changing fast. And I've got to make one thing clear before I continue. This entire storyline about Donald Trump abandoning Europe and how there's this tension between the United States and Europe, I explain how this is a fake-ass bullshit storyline, guys. It's used to justify increased NATO spending in Europe because the United States has subsidized European defense spending in NATO. So they fake this tension between the United States and Donald Trump and how Donald Trump's going to scale back his NATO spending. So you guys better increase your NATO spending to 5% in order to fill the void. And then the European NATO leaders who want to create a militarized state, they didn't say, oh, guys, we have no choice but to increase our military spending by 5% because Donald Trump in the United States said they were pulling back. So you guys know that Mark Rutte and Donald Trump, they brag all the time. Mark Rutte says Donald Trump is the greatest thing to ever happen to NATO because Donald Trump created this political mechanism which will lead to increased military spending in Europe while he demanded European countries to slash social spending. And now their leaders did it and pretend they had no choice but to do otherwise but to do that. They're doing that in France. They're doing that in Germany. They're doing that in the UK, slashing social spending, slashing pensions in order to fund a militarized police state. And that's what they're going together in Munich to discuss. And you want to know who's joining this? And I want to get your thoughts on this, Kshama. You have AOC that is making her big debut as an imperialist planner. And we have a few clips to show, but I want to get Kshama and Sawant in here first. Like AOC to offer a working class perspective. Come on, man. AOC to offer a working class perspective on U.S. foreign policy at Munich summit. Here's another headline. And then, Kshama, I want to get your thoughts if you have any on this story. AOC, Ocasio-Cortez, takes progressive vision to Munich. We are ready for the next chapter. So AOC, and we're going to show you guys a few clips here to show you just how horrific AOC foreign policy is. But this is AOC going to Munich to lay out the NATO left vision for the world. And believe it or not, you have AOC who advocates for endless United States imperialism because she believes that United States imperialism serves as a check to authoritarianism. But before I get to those clips, we got a few clips to react to, Kshama. Do you have any thoughts about what I view as an increased militarism of Europe? I covered earlier before you joined how European countries like the UK is engaging in full-fledged fascism, arresting people and charging them with terrorism acts for opposing their crimes. As they send more weapons to Nazis in Ukraine, there is a militarization of the West going on. Have you seen this, Kshama? Do you have any thoughts before I continue on this story, Kshama?
Just on, I totally agree with everything you're saying. That just the increased and grotesque sort of uber militarization of these various nations. I actually was reminded of something that I wanted to say earlier when we were talking about journalists being slaughtered in Israel, that if you look at, and I'll come to AOC and Munich in a second, but if you look at the way the flow of weapons, sort of, the pipeline happens from the United States across the world, obviously most of the weaponry, just the horrific arsenal of bloodshed that the Israeli state uses, not only against the Palestinian people, obviously most horrifically against them, but also against Iranians, Yemenis, Jordanians, and Syrians. There's been multiple acts of aggression that have happened in that region in recent years. But if you look at, so 70% of the weaponry flows from the United States, and who makes all the money? It's the billionaires. And it's not only obviously the Palantir billionaires are very prominent in that, and they are absolutely psychopaths. But if you look at who profits from the weaponry, it is all the billionaires, because it's all the billionaires and multimillionaires who have shares in BlackRock, Blackstone, State Street, Geode, all these venture funds and sort of financial management entities that own most of the shares of most of the corporations. And so, in other words, every billionaire and multimillionaire is complicit in the genocide in Gaza and on ICE terror. And every billionaire and multimillionaire has the blood on their hands of millions of people who have been slaughtered across the world. And so if you look at all of that, so you have all these billionaires profiting from it. The weapons are flowing to Israel. Israel also manufactures its own weapons from getting parts from Germany, but again, primarily from the US. And then those weapons, the Israeli state also sells those weapons. Who do you think buys those weapons? It's other imperialist nations, not the US maybe, but other smaller imperialist nations. And you know which nation or which capitalist state is one of the biggest buyers of Israel-made weapons? It's India. The Indian capitalist state buys, my understanding is 34% of Israeli-made weapons. And, these are weapons of absolute destruction and devastation. And so it's 34%. I mean, that's a big chunk of what is manufactured in Israel. In other words, India is buying a big chunk of what is profiting the billionaires in the US, and it's also profiting the billionaires in India. And in fact, they just signed a deal. The Indian state just signed a deal to buy 8.7 billion with a B dollars of weapons from Israel. I mean, this is the global capitalist system writ large, which is why we have to always remind working class people that we have no way out of this completely damned system unless we build international working class solidarity and we have revolutionary movements to actually overthrow capitalism in nation after nation. It's not going to be enough to do it in one nation, and it's going to be hard enough as it is in one nation. And so because of all of that, and if having all of that in the background, it really explains how rotten it is, the position that AOC has taken, and shows you that at the end of the day, these progressive Democrats are nothing other than pro-capitalist politicians. If you go to a Munich security conference and advocate for, which is what she just did, and I'm sure people who are watching this have seen this news and all of the news headlines you just shared, Nick, and also the tweets from Max Blumenthal and others who are pointing out, and Max pointed this out, that if you listen to AOC in that television interview, whatever, on the stage,
Yeah,
she
we're gonna show
sounds
it
like
here.
Sorry.
Yeah, we're gonna show it here soon. But go ahead, Kshama.
Please do show that. But I was just going to say that she sounds, as Max Blumenthal said, she sounds like Hillary Clinton. She's actually advocating for NATO and the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And it brought me a flashback, Nick, because in 2015, 2016, when I was on the Seattle City Council, I actually fought for and won a resolution. I forced the Democrats to support our resolution against Obama's, Obama was the president at that time, against Obama's fast tracking of Trans-Pacific Partnership. That is a socialist position, being against any capitalist or institution, because that's what NATO is. NATO is an international capitalist, warmongering, anti-working class, vicious institution, as is the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And so it is absolutely shameful and really exposes what AOC's actual agenda is. And I'll just say one last thing before you play this video is, if you look at who goes to the Munich Security Conference, it is all the weapons manufacturers, the corporations, all those political leaders, politicians who are responsible for the genocide, who are right now responsible for the genocide, for all the wars happening across the world. The Iraq war, going back to the Iraq war, because we're talking about NATO and it has a long arm of history. We're talking about people who funded Saudi Arabia's brutal war against ordinary people in Yemen. And we're talking about all these corporations like Palantir, as I mentioned. You're talking about Lockheed Martin, RTX, Bay Systems, all of these completely horrific weapons manufacturers. These are the people that AOC is hobnobbing with, and it is criminal, but not surprising, that the New York Times and the Washington Post are presenting this as if, AOC is going to offer a working class vision. Are you fucking kidding me? A working class vision of war and bloodshed and weapons manufacturers? I don't think so.
Yeah, you guys see how they play their part in trying to help manufacture this AOC 2028. They're still trying to pretend that like she's a darling of the left. They still pretend that people on the left are supportive of AOC. Like, bro, the AOC been lost left support. Her supports are liberal wine moms. Have you guys seen the rally against oligarchy tour that Bernie Sanders and AOC hosted? They're like completely opposite than the old school Bernie 2020 rally, 2016 rallies as well. They're full of MSNBC watching boomers. And the reason why I do propaganda report on this show, like on my channel, we do these segments where I'll show you guys like BBC propaganda. I'll show you guys like Washington Post, MSNBC shit, and I'll see chat like, come on, Nate, this is torture. Why are we watching this? I'll show you guys this so you guys can see what our ops are saying. But it's also important so you guys can identify people who pretend to be our friends who also say the same shit that we see on MSNBC and CNN. So the shit that I'll show you guys that our neocon propagandists claim, you guys are like, I can't believe anyone would believe this. I can't believe anyone would say that. Meanwhile, we catch progressive politicians in 4K repeating the same propaganda that we easily dismantle on RBN. So here's just a small example. We're going to get to some clips here. But you guys see how AOC is dumbing down U.S. imperialism and foreign policy and reducing it as nothing but a red and blue game? It's AOC accuses Trump of ushering an age of authoritarianism. But what Joe Biden issuing an age of authoritarianism when you know he was covering up the murder of a Palestinian American journalist, Shireen Abdul Akleh? Remember how we just covered that? And the Biden administration, for example, played a very crucial role in hiding evidence. It came out that the Biden administration blocked the release of evidence that would have confirmed Israel committing war crimes. Is that Biden engaging in the quote-unquote authoritarianism, which is a word that often means nothing nowadays? But her job is to dumb down the left when it comes to foreign policy and their analysis of imperialism as a whole. And we covered Matt Duss on this show. Before we get to the AOC clips, I want you guys to realize who is programming AOC and the NATO left into having horrific batshit geopolitical opinions. So who is the person that is leading the think tank in the left in the United States that making them supportive of NATO? You guys realize that's Matt Duss, right? Matt Duss is the foreign policy advisor for all these Bernie industrial complex scumbags. He's the guy that Hassan Piker brings on his show all the time and gives softball interviews, and Matt Duss does spiel about how we need to support NATO and why we need to condemn anti-Semitism on the left. That's Matt Duss. Matt Duss is the one who wanted the left to condemn Palestinian resistance as well. He's the one that in his tweets he spreads the mass rape hoax of October 7th, smearing members of Hamas as rapists. He compares Russian war tactics with Israel. Oh, yeah, Russia's similar to Israel. They're committing a genocide as well. Like he spent a lot of time. I know it's hard to see on the screen. I know this tweet is pretty hard to see, but on the bottom left here, he attacks the left for quote unquote denying the Hamas mass rape atrocities. And look on the far right. I know once again, I know it's hard for you guys to say, but there's a Political article how he explains how he's been mischaracterized as anti-Israel. He's like, a lot of people mischaracterize my position as anti-Israel. That's not true. A quick note: he sympathizes with Israel, in part from his personal roots in American evangelical Christianity. So Matt Duss is a batshit crazy evangelical Christian who launders and manipulates people on the progressive left to take a progressive accept Palestine position. This is why Bernie Sanders refused to say Israel's committing a genocide. This is why Bernie Sanders and AOC continues to launder the fake bullshit about supporting defensive weapons to Israel. By the way, whenever you guys hear Bernie Sanders and AOC say they support defensive weapons to Israel, that's bullshit. That defensive weapons part includes munitions used to fight quote-unquote terrorist organizations in Iran and Syria. They claim that Israel bombing Hezbollah targets in Lebanon is part of defensive actions by Israel. So one of the biggest lies told by the progressive left is the lie that AOC and Bernie Sanders opposes offensive weapons to Israel. That's bullshit. They just define it as defensive weapons, and they support weapons that are used to murder children in Lebanon. And you want to know who the chief mastermind behind all of this is? Sorry for going on this little rant, Kshama, but you guys realize that this is Matt Duss. Matt Duss plays such a gigantic role, and I cannot emphasize this enough, fam. I cannot even do justice in this short segment to explain how Matt Duss is literally the cancer that is responsible for every single horrific foreign policy decision. You guys see Ro Khanna support, then you guys see AOC support. Like, you guys see how Matt Duss was one of the people that was spreading the lie that Biden supports a ceasefire. And Matt Duss, I'm trying to be quicker here. Matt Duss is one of the people that will go on shows all the time to explain how progressives got to support Biden, because Biden has actually been a thorn to Netanyahu's side the entire time. Fam, I had my eyes on this guy forever. You guys have no idea how nefarious Matt Duss is. Here's Matt Duss praising the choice that Biden, when he picked Anthony Blinken, like when Joe Biden picked Anthony Blinken as Secretary of State, I'm glad he finds this humorous as well. Matt Duss was like, I think this is a good choice. Tony has strong confidence of the president-elect and has knowledge and experience for the important work of rebuilding U.S. diplomacy. So he's endorsing Anthony Blinken, and we know that Anthony Blinken,
he's endorsing a monster who was going to go and be the Secretary of State for another monster, Joe Biden. I mean, these are monstrous people that are being endorsed by people like Matt Duss.
And I can go on receipts and Oppo research on Matt Duss. He's a nefarious figure in the progressive left. He is the main think tanker that leads the imperialist progressive left. I'm trying to see what this receipt says. He reposts this one as well. Like he reposts hardcore Zionists all the time. So yeah, I think he's highlighting how Matt does post. Like there's even more like the squirrel, Zay Squirrel. She's been on Matt Duss this entire time. So he's a supporter of sending weapons to bed. Oh yeah, I covered this clip before. I remember this clip. This is where he went on Hassan Piker's show, and Hassan Piker allowed him to launder a bunch of pro-war narratives unchallenged. And people wonder why I don't trust Hassan. Hassan brought Matt Duss on, and he allowed Matt Duss, gave him all these soft tongue bath. It's a tongue bath interview, and this is the kind of stuff that Matt Duss is saying. This is what he is here to convince the left.
However, the way that I approached it as a progressive, who believes in people's rights to defend themselves, people's rights to independence, in international law, and the right of countries not to be invaded by their more powerful neighbors is a pretty foundational idea in international law. I mean, I saw a set of principles and values that were being upheld by a policy of the U.S. government, even if I didn't go all the way with the reasons why the U.S. government was doing. However, the way that.
So he said they claim they support the Banderite Nazis in Ukraine, but he's also the same person who condemns Hamas and Palestinian resistance, and the one who convinces AOC and them not to support the Palestinian resistance. So now that I just did a very short coverage of who Matt Duss is, we can get to the clips now because AOC. Let me refresh this here. I gotta refresh this so the audio will work. Matt Duss visits the Munich Security Council with AOC, and AOC selects Matt Duss as her main foreign policy advisor. Matt Duss is the foreign policy advisor of all of the NATO leftists. He's the foreign policy advisor to Ro Khanna, the foreign policy advisor to Bernie Sanders. And she's invited at this security conference, and from the few clips I've seen, and I may sit down and watch this whole thing. I might find the whole video, but the few clips I've seen of this is AOC promoting liberal imperialism. So that was my long intro rant. Let me play the clips now, and Kshama, I want to get your thoughts on this. Here's AOC's first clip at the Munich Security Council, where I don't know how to describe this as anything else other than AOC endorsing U.S. imperialism as a practice.
Just a 20-second follow-up, really, just quick. Are there any particular institutions that a Democratic administration would want to save? Like your voters, is it NATO? Is it the climate accord? Is it the Iran nuclear? Are there some things where, just give me a lily pad.
Well, first and foremost, I think we need to revisit our commitments to international aid, not just USAID, but the dozens of global compacts that this current Secretary of State and President Trump have withdrawn from. They are looking to withdraw the United States from the entire world so that we can turn into an age of authoritarians that can carve out the world where Donald Trump can command the Western Hemisphere and Latin America as his personal sandbox, where Putin can saber rattle around Europe and try to bully around our own allies there, and for essentially authoritarians to have their own geographic domains. And it actually is the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It is our global alliances that can be a hard stop against authoritarian consolidation of power, particularly in the installation of regional puppet governments.
Fam. Do you guys have any idea how batshit crazy that answer is? I want your thoughts, Kshama. But this is essentially AOC saying and endorsing U.S. imperialism because she claims that U.S. imperialism is a check to authoritarianism. Like, you guys realize that's the height of neocon ideology, right? Is that U.S. imperialism must exist because that's how we check the quote-unquote authoritarianism of other rogue malicious actors. This is horrific. But before I continue, Kshama, I want to get your thoughts on this. Any reaction to this clip?
Yes, this is what I was watching earlier, and this is what I was referring to, that she literally says that we need the Trans-Pacific Partnership as a check against authoritarianism. So, just as you were saying that her claim that imperialism is a check on authoritarianism is completely turning reality on its head. It is imperialism and capitalism and all the exploitation and misery that it brings that gives space to authoritarianism. So to take it out of those highfalutin words and to put it very bluntly and simply and plainly, the only reason that Trump was able to win one election, let alone two elections, is because of the the millions of people, tens of millions of American people who recognize that the Democratic Party is also rotten. They recognize the Republican Party is also rotten. They're looking for an alternative. No actual militant working class alternative exists for them as far as the presidential election is concerned. And then there you go. There's space for Donald Trump to lie to working class people and say, I'm for the forgotten men and women. I'm going to clean out the swamp. I'm going to be the anti-establishment guy. But in reality, all of this is establishment. This is all theater. This is political theater where we, as working people, the people who are whose lives are ravaged by capitalism and imperialism globally, we are asked to believe that this, this imperialism dressed up nicely in nice words and with AOC as part of the face of it is somehow better than the authoritarianism of Donald Trump, and is completely belying the reality, completely, just sort of negating the reality that they are actually two sides of the same coin. I wouldn't say that they're exactly the same. However, they are part of the same process. They are both coming from capitalism and imperialism, and it is precisely because of the betrayals by people like AOC that then it ends up creating bigger monsters like Donald Trump. That is the process of the creation of Trumpism, of right-wing ideologies, of reactionary leaders. That is the pipeline through which that is created. And so if we want to fight the right wing, if you want to defeat the right wing, then having illusions in AOC or any other progressive Democrat is absolutely not the way to go. It's the exact opposite. The more you have illusions in them, the more you keep electing them and not presenting a working class alternative to them, an actual working class alternative to them, the more we will see right wing grow. It's not only about Trump. After Trump drops dead, the Trumpism and other worse forms of Trumpism will be arising. And it is insidious. I mean, it is absolutely insidious for her and the media to aid and abet her in this process of saying, well, I'm bringing working class politics to Munich. No, you're not. What you're doing is launching your presidential career, your presidential run. That's what you're doing. You're trying. I mean, the only reason that AOC is there, Nick, we all know this. So let's just say it. The only reason she's there is she wants to build towards a possible presidential candidacy. That is why she's there. Because why would you go to the Munich Security Conference if you actually wanted to present a working class agenda? If you want to have a working class agenda, why the hell did you not do force the vote and actually fight for universal healthcare? Why the hell have you been in Congress since January 2019 and you haven't won a single thing for working class people? Why, if you care about working class people, have you not even made an inch of progress towards a national $15 an hour minimum wage? Why, if you care about the working class, did you lead the way among the progressive Democrats in breaking the railroad workers' strike? Why, if you care about the working class, have you supported the Iron Dome funding in Israel and helped to ravage the lives of working class Palestinians? I mean, all of this is a complete lie This is her presidential career that is being launched. And she's talking about US aid. I mean, that's the first thing that comes to her mind when she talks about assistance to the Palestinians. This is another state sponsored organization. If you want to talk about aid, we should talk about the United Nations food assistance to Gaza that has been banned multiple times by the US Congress, including by Democrats, including my opponent, Adam Smith. That is what we should be talking about, the actual food assistance and medical assistance that hasn't been allowed to reach the Gazans, obviously on top of the fact that they're literally being blown to smithereens. And just one other thing I'll say is that and you were alluding to this already, Nick, the false idea of that liberal imperialism or imperialism peddled by liberal politicians like her is somehow a check on authoritarianism. This is a completely false dichotomy. The authoritarianism of Donald Trump and the performatively progressive pro-capitalist politics of people like AOC, they are, as I said, two sides of the same coin. We have to defeat them both. The only way the working class has any way forward at all, for example, in the United States, is for us to destroy both the Democratic and the Republican parties. And for that, we have to start building our own party of the working class. For that, we have to start talking about building independent struggles. Like, for example, just concretely right now, we need to figure out how to actually rebuild the proud militant American labor movement, and we need to empower rank and file people. So I'll just one other thing I'll mention in this context is that on Sunday, February 22nd at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, Workers Strike Back and my campaign for Congress, we are co-hosting a really one-of-a-kind event where it's a mass meeting to fight for a general strike. It will be discussing actual strategy to fight for a general strike. We will come there with petitions and resolutions that rank and file union members can use to begin a real debate inside their unions to put a check, talking about put a check on the labor leadership. And so it doesn't matter where you are in the nation, you can tune in over live stream. We want you to, and we want you to join Workers Strike Back. If you're a union member, we want you to take these petitions and resolutions and begin an actual conversation and build support among your fellow rank and file.
That was one hell of a rant and takedown, Kshama. I knew you have a lot to say about the AOC clip, and that was a fantastic breakdown. Where do I even start? Because as I mentioned before, in this clip, it's clear. Actually, I won't play it again. I won't play it again just so you guys get the full breath. And before I break it down, because to me, this is a damning worldview. So I'll play this clip one more time, and I'm gonna come back with some more analysis on this. And there's also more clips of AOC essentially claiming that she won never-ending war against Russia. Which, how does that benefit the working class?
Can you play that clip also after you?
Yeah, I still got like 2 more clips of AOC. We still got plenty to cover. I'll play this one more time, and Sean, feel free if you still have more thoughts, you can chime in. But there's a lot to say about this because this is AOC endorsing imperialism as a way to check authoritarianism.
Just a 20-second follow-up, really, just quick. Are there any particular institutions that a Democratic administration would want to save? Like your voters, is it NATO? Is it the climate accord? Is it the Iran nuclear? Are there some things where, just give me a lily pad?
Well, first and foremost, I think we need to revisit our commitments to international aid, not just USAID, but the.
By the way, we covered how you guys know that USAID was caught paying no-show salaries to professional agitators, so they got paid just to create violent protests in countries where they wanted to overthrow and destabilize. USAID was used as a tool of imperialism. They was used to fund propaganda outlets like Radio Free Asia that spread absolute nonsense about states like North Korea that still had a profound negative effect on Western population. There's people who still repeat nonsense they heard from Radio Free Asia with no sources. That stuff was funded by USAID. USAID was used to spread propaganda worldwide and create an on-the-ground workforce to overthrow governments. And do you guys think AOC doesn't know this? AOC knows exactly what USAID is. All these liberals, they know exactly what it does. This is them supporting covert actions that destabilize governments that the United States don't like. But let's continue.
Dozens of global compacts that this current Secretary of State and President Trump have withdrawn from. They are looking to withdraw the United States from the entire world so that we can turn into an age of authoritarianisms.
Where do I even start with that statement? So the idea that Trump is even withdrawing from the world, like, I'm not being a stickler here, but you guys see how that's not even an accurate analysis of what's going on? If the United States starving Cuba to death, is that Donald Trump retreating from the world, saying, Kshama Sawant, the complete blockade of Cuba and Donald Trump threatening other countries if they provide support for Cuba? Is that them retreating from the world stage? Is them committing a genocide in Israel and supporting Israel bombing their neighbors in Iraq, Lebanon, Syria? Is that them retreating from the world stage? So there's just a small point here, but you guys see how she misrepresents the status of the geopolitical world stage. To say the United States is retreating, that's her trying to create a dumb, uninformed left. And she also claims that United States retreating, let's say that Donald Trump is retreating from the world stage. You guys see how she paints that as a negative thing? As if United States retreating and the United States having less military bases, the United States being involved in less countries. You see how she paints that as a negative and how that will lead to an age of authoritarianism? This is the chief principle ideology of what it means to be a neocon. The United States presence is needed around the world to maintain stability. And by stability, what they really mean is neocon, United States imperialist domination. So what AOC is really decrying here, what they would never admit, is they are decrying the decline of the power of the United States empire. That's what they're discussing. Are they really concerned about the United States empire checking authoritarianism, whatever that means? You guys know I completely reject that term. It's a propaganda term that means nothing. So when AOC says the United States government and U.S. imperialism is here to check authoritarianism, is it checking the authoritarianism of the UK government that we just covered? What about the fact that the UK arrests more people based on what they post on social media than any country in the world? What about the fact that Germany and UK is engaging in mass violence against Palestinian pro-Palestinian protesters to defend the state of Israel? What about the fact that Israel is engaging in mass slaughter of journalists? What about the fact that in France, the left won an election in a landslide and Emmanuel Macron and the capitalist class decided, like, no, we're not following this election result. Now we're going to appoint our own government anyway, even though the people in France voted for a left-wing government. Do you guys remember that? You guys remember how France completely overturned the results of their election? You guys know how AOC have no criticism of this quote-unquote authoritarianism that's coming from France, the UK, and Germany? In fact, they never bring up the authoritarianism and fascism that comes out of Europe because AOC is not concerned with actually fighting authoritarianism. She's actually here to promote continued United States hegemonic dominance. She's just giving directions to the left on how to communicate that. So she goes again. I'm gonna let it continue. You guys see, I'll let it play in full first before I break it down piece by piece because literally every line she says is rant worthy for me. So let me play a little bit more before I chime in. And Kshama, I'll give you a chance to respond as well.
Authoritarians that can carve out the world where Donald Trump can command the Western Hemisphere and Latin America as his personal sandbox, where Putin can saber rattle around Europe and try to bully around our own allies there, and for
bully our allies,
authoritarians to.
So you guys see how her worldview is completely warped. So it's the United States that is starving Cuba. Where does this fit in your worldview, AOC? You want to know who come in defense of Cuba? You want who came in defense of Venezuela? You want who consistently is serving as a check to United States imperialism, the same way he served as a check to Ukrainian fascists murdering ethnic Russians in the Donbass region? It's Vladimir Putin, who she accuses of being an authoritarian tyrant. Your state is starving Cuba. Putin is coming to the rescue. So where did this fit in her analysis of the world in authoritarianism. You guys, does it fit anywhere? Does it fit the fact that China is providing solar panels? China and Russia, who are victims of the aggression of the imperialist state, is coming to the aid of countries who are also victims of the imperialist state. Where does this factor in your analysis of global conflicts and authoritarianism and imperialism? So I'll read this headline. Just because I want to make this point. Cuba has installed 49 solar parks donated by China into its electrical grid. This now accounts for 20% of all Cuba's electricity generation, all in 1 year's work. The United States can try to blockade and starve Cuba all they want. China won't let them. It's not me saying these states are perfect, but where does these facts fall on your worldview that the world is being broken up into a spheres of authoritarianisms, which is just another way for her to dumb down leftist thought on this issue. So we have another clip, but before I continue, I want to get any more thoughts you have, Kshama, because you guys know how to do a long-form breakdown of that, and I'm just scratching the surface. So much more to say on that, but I want to get my friend Kshama in here. Any other thoughts you have on that clip in particular? Anything else you want to add? We don't have a ton of time, but I want to show you guys at least 2 more clips of this insane interview, as far as I'm concerned. Any other thing you want to add, Kshama, before I move on?
Yeah, just very quickly. I mean, obviously, we've talked about this before, Nick. Yeah, I think that it is important that working class people anywhere not have illusions in any imperialist power anywhere, whether it is Putin or China or the United States. In reality, the capitalist powers are locked in an inter-imperialist rivalry. The capitalist states are locked in an inter-imperialist rivalry with China and Russia roughly on one side, and the Western capitalism led by the United States on the other side. So I think we do have to be clear not to have any illusions in any of these guys. I mean, they are in competition with one another, and it's true some of the dynamics that the way you said, they are playing out in terms of Cuba and Venezuela and other Latin American nations. But at the end of the day, working class people everywhere get screwed by the capitalist class everywhere. And so it's very important that we are relentless about class-based solidarity and not have illusions in any state whatsoever. So in other words, our loyalties, as American working people, is with working class people everywhere, Cuba, Venezuela, of course, but also Russia and Ukraine, the working class people who are suffering from the war. We are on their side, and we have to build solidarity with them, and then explain to them that none of these imperialist powers are on any of our sides. Actually, they will throw us they will throw us into the well the first chance that they get. But having said that, I also wanted to respond to what you were saying earlier about her. AOC is completely it is. I mean, it is batshit crazy, as you're saying, Nick. But it only appears that way because you would think that somebody like her would have a different point of view. In reality, as you and I both know, the point of view she has presented in that interview is very much the standard. It's like garden variety standard talking points of American imperialism. This is how they speak. This is what they say. They talk about NATO and the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, as these morally high ground institutions, and hide the ugly face of what they actually do, which is they're warmongering. And as you said earlier, nations like Germany, the capitalist state there in Europe, they are brutally cutting the budget for all the essential services. They're cutting the funding for healthcare and other infrastructure, and a lot of this money is going into expanded military budgets, just like in the United States. I mean, if you look at the trillions of dollars that go into the military and for ICE and Homeland Security funding, and that most of that money ends up in the hands of the billionaire class. And just lastly, I wanted to say, when she's just sort of read, as you said, every word she utters deserves a rant because it is such a lie. Just to pick one of those lies, because we're short on time, she talked about how Trump is using the Western Hemisphere as his own personal sandbox. Of course, yes, Trump has been extremely, has already had brutal actions against Venezuela and now Cuba, and we have to be completely against that. We have to build working class solidarity with the people in those nations. But look at the lie she is getting into here, because the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are equal partners in the bloody policies towards these nations. The sanctions, Nick, the economic sanctions against Venezuela, which have been totally destructive, totally destructive. They have the Lancet, the medical journal, the Lancet, did a study of the impacts of these sanctions over many years, and they have said that it has actually resulted in the worst ever economic depression. If you measure the consequences, it's worse than the Great Depression's consequences. That is how brutal the impact of the sanctions has been on the Venezuelan people. Who do you think has supported these sanctions? It's both Democrats and Republicans. Biden continued the sanctions. I mean, he did this performative thing where he tried to stop them for a few months, and then they continued unabated for the rest of his administration. And so both of them have been in collusion in their policies against Latin America, the coup after coup that has happened in Latin America, and also the whole idea that Maria Corina Machado and all these absolute reactionaries, the one who won the Nobel Prize, that the people who are welcoming them are not just Trump, it's also Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and all of these people in AOC's party. So this is a bipartisan policy. Imperialism and war is bipartisan policy by the Democrats and Republicans, and AOC is part of all of that.
Very well said, Sean. I want to get to our next clip. I know we discussed this many times before, because I obviously appreciate your perspective. We have a different thought on this in general, because I look at, when I see Russia and China, especially with China providing and preventing and forgiving so much debt in Africa, them come in solidarity with Cuba, Russia come in support of the people who are victims of NATO imperialism. I think it's important, and once again, we don't have to get into it because we debate this before. I think this is a difference between how we view the world, and it's okay. We don't have to agree 100% on everything, but I think it's very important for us as socialists for us not to undermine the sovereignty of working classes in other countries. So the way I see it, I see Russia and China and the people in their societies, they stand with their government because their government is fighting for their sovereignty against the genocidal imperialist West. Once you understand that imperialism is a system of capitalism, and these capitalists want to reduce every single country into implementing austerity politics, neoliberal politics, like countries like China and Russia, who may not be perfect, they are protecting the sovereignty of their people while defending the sovereignty of many global working class majorities who are victims of United States imperialism. But that's why I showed the Russia-Cuba receipt. That's why I showed the China-Cuba receipt. It's one part of the working class who are victims of Western imperialism. And this is where we disagree. I'll let you respond, but we don't have to get into a big debate over it. I don't think we should, especially as people who live in the empire, I don't think we should undermine that solidarity that China and Russia show to the global majority who are victims of United States imperialism. Yeah, they have imperfections, but at the end of the day, they are defending and they're upholding the sovereignty of their own people while providing services to their people that we can't even dream. Like Russia, it may not be always socialist, but they got paid maternity leave. They have healthcare. They got working class programs that we couldn't even dream of. So I think just casting all capitalist classes as the same is kind of reductive. That's just my thought. We talked and we disagree on this point many times before, so we don't have to rehash it. But that's just my perspective, not my worldview. But Kshama, I'll let you respond. But I think it's very important to make those distinctions on who's fighting the empire, who defending sovereignty, who is fighting the bald pedophile class. And I think AOC muddying the waters, like pretending that Putin is the same as Trump, that's kind of similar to what you're kind of doing there, pretending that they're all imperialists. I think that kind of muddies the water in a way that is not intellectually helpful for the left. But we discussed this and we disagreed on this plenty before. I think that's probably one of our biggest disagreements, if that worldview. But I'll let you respond. We don't have to debate too much longer. I want to give you a chance to respond, then we move on to some more AOC clips.
Sure, absolutely. And I think we hopefully have time to talk about the Epstein files as well, which is another really huge issue. Yes, first of all, Nick, I really appreciate that we are able to discuss very frankly. And yes, this is extreme. This exchange that we continue to have, for people to see publicly, this is a very, very important example of how the left should be building itself, where we do have some disagreements. We don't have too many disagreements. If we had too many disagreements, then we would really be on different sides. I mean, like AOC, we're not on the same side. Like, but you and I, we are on the same side, but we do have disagreements on certain issues, and they are very much overshadowed by the agreements we do have. But at the same time, it is important to talk about what the things we do disagree about, and at the same time not have that hamper our ability to build principled unity. I mean, we have invited you at our events, even though we know that we disagree on certain things, because it is so crucial for us to build principled unity on the left. That is the need of the hour, having principled unity. When I say principled unity, I mean exactly what we're doing, where we actually do in reality agree on a lot, and the things that we do disagree about, we speak openly about. And just to say, I don't agree that what I'm saying is reductive or in any ways similar to what AOC is. I mean, what AOC is doing is straight up pro-capitalism. Our position is pro-capitalism. My position is not pro-capitalism in any way. I am a Marxist. I'm a Trotskyist. It is the 180-degree opposite of what AOC is saying. But just to be clear, I am not equating every capitalist state to the United States. That's not what I'm doing. What I am saying, though, is fundamentally capitalism and the capitalist class and its states are never going to be friends of the working class. So that doesn't mean equating Putin to Trump, but it also means not misunderstanding, which I think, that's why I don't agree with you. It's a misunderstanding to think that somehow because Putin is not the same as Trump, or if there was actual NATO provocation against Russia, which there was, and every diplomat openly agrees that what's playing out in Ukraine is an inter-imperialist proxy war. Everybody agrees it's like an open secret. So my point is that agreeing to that, which absolutely is my position as well, that this is an inter-imperialist proxy war. We are absolutely opposed to all imperialist wars, whether it is Ukraine or the genocide in Gaza. We're absolutely opposed to it. But understanding that doesn't mean that somehow Putin is better than some other capitalist state leader, or that the Russian capitalist state is better, or the Chinese capitalist state is better. The things that you're talking about, I mean, those are facts, which is the actual things that the people in those nations have in terms of social services, in terms of access to healthcare, housing, all of that. Those are all facts, but it's not because of these capitalist state leaders like Putin and Xi Jinping that they have it. Those gains were won. For example, in Russia, they are the remnants of what was won by the workers' revolution. And so it is actually very much, that's something that Putin is very much hostile to. I mean, if you look at the actual policies that Putin and the Chinese regime have on their own dissidents and on left activists there and on working class people there, it is pretty brutal. And so that's why we don't want to, because we have a critique of Trump doesn't mean that we should dull our critique on the Chinese regime, on the Russian regime. And we should celebrate the gains that working class people have won there, but understand that it is not because of the capitalist state that they have, that it's actually remnants of, in Russia especially, it is the workers' revolution, which again, later degenerated into Stalinism, and then all of that crumbling, the fall of the Soviet Union, the brutal restoration of capitalism in Russia, all of that, all those events have now led to what's happening right now with Putin, the war against Ukraine, all of that. So just understanding the historical processes allows us to understand. Similar in China, it was not an actual workers' revolution, but it was a revolution, and it did actually provide gains to the broad majority of the working class and the peasantry. And those gains we want to fight for those types of gains, but also understand that we are not going to win those if we have illusions in any capitalist state. Working class people have to fight. That's why, as I say, our solidarity is undying solidarity with the working class and the oppressed people in all nations, including China, Russia, and Ukraine, and of course Venezuela and Cuba, but never make peace with any capitalist state. And even if you don't agree, hopefully there was also a more explanation of where I'm coming from.
Yeah, we agree on a lot of issues. This is one this is one issue we have talked about a lot. We disagree on, but you guys know I'm still very supportive of Kshama because our worldview aligns our desire to take on imperialism, to end wars, to provide strength to the working class. I do think that this tension between Marxist-Leninists and Trotsky need to be discussed more in detail. That's why I'm glad that Kshama was willing to do that, because it is important to remember that these working class victories in Russia and China was won by the people during popular revolutions. But it's also important for us to remember that these people, the people itself, the people that we support, we are the ideology of the working class. That's what communism is, the ideology of the working class. So I don't, and this is where I come from, I don't like undermining that, because the same working class people are supportive of Putin. The same working class people are supportive of Xi Jinping in China, where they're extremely enthusiastic about the future. So that's where I come from. I don't like to undermine that solidarity. But we don't have to continue. Go ahead. I'll give you last word on it. I'll give you last word.
No, I was just going to say, I'm not sure. I wouldn't be confident that the people are supportive of them. Actually, there's a huge amount of repression in both China and Russia. And so maybe we should talk about that another time. And I'm happy to discuss, even if we don't agree.
Yeah. We can get back to AOC, because this is AOC. Well, I just think her worldview is pretty disgusting. Like the way the Western chauvinism that was drilled into her by Matt Duss is apparent on this clip. So let's get to the clip. I want to get your reaction, Kshama.
I think one of the reasons why, not just myself, but many of our colleagues here, in fact, many Democrats that are here as well, is because we want to tell a larger story, that what is happening is indeed very grave. And we are in a new era, domestically and globally. There have been many leaders who've said we will go back. And I think we have to recognize that we are in a new day and in a new time. But that does not mean that the majority of Americans are ready to walk away from a rules-based order, and that we're ready to walk away from our commitment to democracy.
So the fact that you even repeat the idea of a rules-based order existing, like, I think that's something that me and Kshama can agree on, that the rules-based order is bullshit. Like, go ahead.
Is she talking about the genocide? I was just going to say, is she talking about the rules? For example, the genocide in Gaza, where more than 500,000 people have been slaughtered. That rules-based order is she talking about? Is she talking about the slaughter in the Ukraine? Is that what she's talking about?
It's hard, but I'll allow it to finish, because I know we get on a little bit long, but I'll let this finish. I still want to quickly. We're still going to do the Zohran segment, so I'm gonna speed this part up a little bit. So let me finish the clip, and I'll get your thoughts on that side.
And that we're ready to walk away from our commitment to democracy. I think what we identify is that in a rules-based order, hypocrisy is vulnerability. And so I think what we are seeking is a return to a rules-based order that eliminates the hypocrisies around when too often in the West we look the other way for inconvenient populations to act out these paradoxes, whether it is, kidnapping a foreign head of state, whether it is threatening our allies to colonize Greenland, whether it is looking the other way in a genocide. Hypocrisies are vulnerabilities, and they threaten democracies globally. And so I think many of us are here to say, we are here and we are ready for the next chapter, not to have the world turn to isolation, but to deepen our partnership on greater and increased commitment to integrity, to our values.
So I'm not exaggerating when I tell you the idea that they have, that the United States presence around the world being a net positive that will lead to more democracy and the establishment of a rules-based order, that is legitimate neocon ideology. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like that's legitimate neocon thinking. Go ahead, Kshama.
No, I was just sorry not to interrupt you. I was just going to say, that's Henry Kissinger all over again.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And I know I showed this interview because I think this interview is timeless. That I did with Ro Khanna. It's one of the only chances I will ever have to talk to one of these people, so I bring up as an example. And the only reason I'm showing you guys this is because I'm showing you how this is a consistent worldview that these progressives have, that these quote-unquote anti-war progressive leftists They legitimately have this worldview where the United States is the good guy and go around acting like G.I. Joe for the good of the world. And this is what Matt does, brainwashes these people to believe. And so this is what Ro Khanna said to me, and I played this clip before, but they legitimately believe the United States here to do good. And he was dumbfounded, Kshama, at me because I was like, bro, I don't believe that stupid shit. Like, that's absurd.
He is on record saying that Ukraine used to be part of the Soviet Union. He wants to
bro, this is at the end of the day, this is irrelevant because do you believe that the United States is waging a proxy war in Ukraine because they actually care about the Ukrainian people and they're against the offensive aggression of states in general? We know that is not true because look at how the United States support Israel.
Let me ask you this: Do you believe that in the history of the United States there are times that we have played a just role in the world?
No.
No.
Why do we go to so Kshama, you guys see how they legitimately believe. They really believe that the United States serves its heroic role where they are the good guys in the world. And that's why Ro Khanna was so shocked when he heard my info. We killed 2 million Koreans, bro. We killed 2 million Koreans. We killed countless Vietnamese people. That's an insane thing to say. And we sanction 1/3 of the world's population. Do you believe we do that out of the kindness of our hearts?
But certainly you would concede that World War II, America played a just and good role in the world.
You guys see how this idea that they are the defenders of justice, this is what the progressives believe. Isn't that damning? Any response, Kshama, before we move on?
I'll just say one thing is that, yes, first of all, they do believe these things. I mean, you have to rationalize it for yourself. You know, you could not live, you know, people like Ro Khanna and AOC and Pramila Jayapal, they have in their brain, they have to rationalize it. It's like they have to do a pretzel-like intellectual exercise in order to believe all the lies that they have to then turn around and peddle. The only other thing I'll say is that I wouldn't say we in the sense that we as in working people, we didn't perpetrate these wars. It is the capitalist powers that did it. So, it was the American ruling class, the American elite, the billionaires, multimillionaires, and their two parties, Democrats and Republicans. They are the ones who have done it. In fact, the working class of America has a proud history of, fighting against the war. The Vietnam War was ended because the masses of people were opposed to it, and because active duty soldiers themselves started defying orders from their superiors in Vietnam. That is the combination of all of that, the strike actions here and the defiance of the active duty soldiers. All of that actually forced the U.S. ruling class to withdraw from Vietnam. So in other words, even the actions of America, we have to, and any other nation, we have to divide by class. What did the working class do? And what did the ruling class do? The ruling class of the United States. So if you ask me the question, has the ruling class of the United States, the capitalist class, ever done anything good abroad? Absolutely not. And Ro Khanna actually needs to believe that, because otherwise he will not be an effective peddler of these lies. He has to somehow almost hypnotize himself, I guess.
This is a very short clip. This is the last one I play. Like, bro, this whole conversation with AOC is extremely revealing. And we only broke down a few clips of it. I'll play this one because this is essentially AOC repeating the MSNBC talking point that we have to have never-ending war with Russia because peace will benefit Putin. The same way that a ceasefire would benefit Hamas. If peace benefits your enemies, what does that say about your position? So this will be the last clip I play. I'll get you to respond, and then we will very quickly cover Mamdani because I know there's a few things you want to say about that. So let's go. We're almost done here. This will be our last clip on AOC before we move on. This shows how she would govern if she was ever president.
There's no conversation about Ukraine that can happen without Ukraine, and so they of course lead in terms of setting their terms on this. But I think that.
So this is essentially AOC saying, even though we provide support, we are funding and enabling this conflict, that we gotta continue to fund this forever until Ukraine is done. And remember, Zelensky and some of his advisors said they will never seek peace until they take back Crimea. So AOC is not saying it directly, But this is AOC essentially saying that we will wage war against Russia forever. But it gets more clear as I let the clip continue.
Setting their terms on this, but I think that overall, as a principle, we shouldn't reward imperialism. And I don't think that we should allow Russia to continue, or any nation to continue violating a nation's sovereignty, and to continue to be rewarded, and whose main lesson and takeaway is that they will gain. And so what that looks like in the specifics, I think, is a deeper conversation. But on principle, I think that is what we should be pursuing.
What that looks like is actually a deeper conversation. Bro, that's a mealy mouth way for her to say that she would never pursue peace with Russia. You guys realize that is what she's saying here. We can't reward imperialism. That means she's never gonna negotiate. That means that this war is endless. What she is saying here is no different than the position that Rachel Maddow has. And I want you guys to realize that every single progressive squad member believes this. Even the quote-unquote good ones. Even the ones that people like to praise, like Rashid Tlaib, Ilhan Omar. Ilhan Omar was taking pictures with Banderite Nazis in Ukraine, saying how she would stand with Ukraine forever. Cori Bush wondered why she lost and she didn't have support. She was sending taxpayer money that was supposed to go to the hood in St. Louis and sending it to Nazis in Ukraine. That's what Cori Bush did. This is the NATO left. And if progressives think I'm ever going to support this Nazi supporter, AOC, you guys are out of your damn mind. Out of your mind. It's our worldview, and me and Kshama discussed some small disagreements, I believe, in our worldview. But to me, the difference between me and AOC worldview is as wide as the ocean is. To me, the difference between me and AOC worldview is like the difference between me and Dick Cheney. Me and Kshama have some disagreements, but we're still aligned on the important parts. But AOC, bro, she's a straight up neocon. Kshama, I'll give you last thoughts, and we will quickly. I'm talking about very quickly cover Zohran. Any final thoughts on AOC before?
Yeah, just to reiterate, what you were saying, Nick, that this is the first time actually she has articulated such a full-fledged pro-war position. Yep. This is as sure a sign as any that she is seriously now planning to run for president, because you cannot run for president from the Democratic or Republican Party and have any kind of soft position against imperialist war. You have to be pro-war. And I just wanted to also say I was outraged. I was outraged by everything she was saying. But one thing that particularly made me angry when I heard her say in just one of the previous clips is she talked about how, we need a NATO with, what did she say, with fewer deficiencies or something. I can't remember the word she used, but anyway, one of the things that she mentioned that, we need to correct for this. I want a NATO, but a better NATO. And one of the things she mentioned was looking the other way in a genocide. Is that how you will describe the role of the Democratic and Republican parties and of Keir Starmer and the German capitalist state and all of these states who have bankrolled the genocide? These people have bankrolled the genocide. The Israeli state is a garrison state of US imperialism and for Western capitalism. Israel does nothing without the actual approval of the US billionaire class and of the Western billionaire class as a whole. So no, they didn't look the other way. They are the perpetrators of the genocide. And AOC, because she cares far, far more about her personal career than she does about the Palestinian people or the American working class people or Ukrainian working people, she doesn't give a shit about any of them. I'm quite convinced from her speeches here. These are pretty shocking. I'm not exactly surprised, but the degree to which she has declared her own warmongering position is pretty fucking shocking. And I think people have to be very aware. One last thing I'll mention, this whole thing, this sanitized version of the Russia-Ukraine war, where they present it as if people like AOC and all the Democrats and Republicans present it as if this is somehow good for the Ukrainian people. The conservative estimate of the number of Ukrainians who have died, and this is a conservative estimate, this is official, always unofficial estimates are greater, 55,000 people, Nick, have been slaughtered in Ukraine, and not to mention the 1.2 million in Russia. But in Ukraine, this is the most important thing I wanted to say, is that in Ukraine, the support for continuing war has completely collapsed. It used to be in 2022, when the war was first launched, it was 73% favored Ukraine, 73% of Ukrainians favored it. And now it is the exact opposite. 69% say they want the war to end, and only 22% say they want the war to continue. So AOC would like you to believe that her position is for the Ukrainian people, but it is exactly the opposite. Her position is for imperialist powers. I mean, this is nakedly a position on pro-imperialism and pro-capitalism as I have ever seen her give.
Very well said. There's much more to add, but we are a little over time, so I'm gonna quickly go to our next topic, because I want to at least mention this, because I have people tagging me left and right. Like, every time one of these stories come out, I get a ton of, you guys see this. My friend Alex tagged me like, Nick, you seen this, bro? People tag me on this stuff all the time, because I'm almost exhausted. I haven't done a lot of I Told You So segments on Zohran because I'm just exhausted. Like, I'm fatigued. I'm going through this over and over again. You know what I mean? Like, I could have done a segment last week about how Zohran endorsed Kathy Hochul. I could have done a segment of how Zohran Mamdani was playing defense for a New York NYPD police officer who murdered someone in cold blood. And Zohran Mamdani came out with a statement that could have easily been read by Eric Adams. I could have did a segment on that. That was like a week or two ago, where a lot of people realized that Zohran Mamdani is going to side with the NYPD over your ass. But guys, I honestly felt fatigued, man. like how often I warn people about Zohran Mamdani, seeing people go through this same cycle over and over again. I was like, man, I could do this segment very easily, but I'm tired. I'm tired, man. I'm tired of the left falling for this shit over and over again. So I guess this is the part. I guess I saved it for Kshama when Kshama get here. So this is the part where we warn people when we told them I told you so, because he just started, fam. You guys realize that the best part of Zohran's mayorship was supposed to be the first few weeks? Just like with any politician. Like that's not just with mayors, with anyone, with a senator, with your president. It's called a honeymoon period. Bro, the honeymoon period is supposed to be your best time as a public official. Zohran Mamdani's honeymoon period has been rocky, to say the least. So one thing I'll quickly break down here is how the vast majority of Zohran Mamdani's plan rely on him increasing taxes on the rich. And what did I tell you guys? I said, fam, Zohran Mamdani is not going to accomplish any of his domestic agenda because he would need the signing off of Kathy Hochul. And Kathy Hochul very early on said, hey, by the way, any policies that require raising taxes on the rich is dead on arrival. I'm going to allocate funds for your child program, your child care program, which is a legitimate victory he got. But anything other than that is not going to be funded. It's not going to be accomplished. So despite the fact that Kathy Hochul killed Zohran's entire domestic agenda, as soon as he took office, Zohran Mamdani endorses her over her progressive primary challenger. So now that I laid the scene, I want to get your thoughts on Zohran Mamdani, Kshama, because this is the headline that infuriated Zohran supporters even more today, and it's spreading. How they have this whole tax the rich rally plan because they understand that the only way that Zohran can accomplish his domestic policy agenda if he tax the rich. You want to know who abandoned his own constituency? You want to know who abandoned his own base as they are rallying, as they are putting work on the grassroots to support his agenda? Zohran Mamdani. You guys see how they're not interested in the inside-outside game? They say, oh, we support an inside-outside game. But whenever the outside game does their part, the inside game will abandon them. So let me read the headline. I'll get your thoughts, Kshama. Tax the Rich rally is expected to draw a big crowd, but not Mamdani. Mayor Zohran Mamdani has told organizers that the February 25th rally he is unlikely to attend because he does not want to antagonize Kathy Hochul. So I just want to set the scene there, Kshama, with my intro. Take it from here. Any thoughts on this and what I view as a massive betrayal by Zohran Mamdani?
It is absolutely a massive betrayal, and I think the reason both you and I are laughing is exactly what the person who tweeted that tweet said. It is getting to be a joke at this point. Yeah. Because not that it's a joke on working class people. I mean, if it's a joke on working class people, it's an absolutely cruel and tragic joke, because who are the people who are going to suffer, continue to suffer, who are going to continue to suffer, not just newly suffer, but continue to suffer when these progressive politicians betray their promises? It's working class people, it's poor people, it's millions of working and poor people in New York City who pinned their hopes on Mamdani because he actually had concrete demands. I mean, unlike most candidates, and I want to talk about them in a second, he actually had a program of demands, as did Bernie Sanders. But as we all warned, as you and I warned repeatedly, Nick, we said that anybody running from the Democratic Party, there is no chance in hell that they're going to actually stand for their demands, because we've seen this story before. We've seen this movie before, right? I mean, how many times are we going to do the whole merry-go-round and think that, okay, this time maybe this guy won't sell us out, maybe, okay, AOC sold us out, but maybe Zohran Mamdani won't sell us out. And as a matter of fact, it actually happened much sooner. Like you said, the honeymoon, and one way I've been saying it is that the AOCification of Mamdani has happened in lightning speed. He's been AOCified, but long before she herself had to be, she actually did a protest outside Nancy Pelosi's office. I think she occupied Nancy Pelosi's office. She actually, I think, joined a movement, a campaign for rent control outside on the steps of the Capitol. I mean, she did at least one or two gestures before she completely sold out. Mamdani is not even going to give you those little performative crumbs. He's not even going to give you performative crumbs. Already look at his betrayal. Obviously, this is like the crowning glory right now, that literally saying that he doesn't want to go to the Tax the Rich rally because he doesn't want to antagonize Kathy Hochul. I mean, how much more blatant does it need to be that this strategy doesn't work? And that's the lesson I want people to draw from this, Nick, is that this strategy of trying to make deals, backroom deals with the Democratic Party, never works. In all the years that I've been politically active, including my 10 years on the city council, I cannot tell you the number of people, well-meaning people, liberals, who came up to me and said, look, I agree with everything you stand for, Kshama, but can't you be nice to the Democrats? Can't you make deals with them? Can't you make alliances with them? And this is the reality. If you try to make alliances with the politicians who represent the capitalist class, then you will end up selling out the working class, for the simple reason that the needs of the working class are diametrically opposed to the greed of the ruling class. You cannot support the politicians who support the greed of the ruling class and then expect that you're going to stand up for the working class. It's very simple. It's a very simple logic that people need to understand. And this is why I never once made a deal of any kind with the Democratic politicians. What I said was that if we can build a strong enough movement, which we did again and again, countless times in my 10 years in office, if we build a strong enough movement, it will force the Democrats to come our way, because they fear for their own careers at that time. By building a movement that exposes them Democrats, you end up creating a dent on their political reputation. And just to care for their political reputations, you might win them over occasionally, but at the same time, that's not going to be enough. We will need to destroy the Democratic Party. But coming back to Mamdani, he has already started talking the same language that every other Democrat speaks. Nick, he has already started talking about how, New York City has a $7 billion debt. We can't do these things. How many times have we heard this? Every mayor of every city has said, we have an X billion dollars in debt. We cannot do anything, because they're not willing to tax the rich. The only difference between Mamdani and all these other Democrats is that he said he would tax the rich, but then at lightning speed, he has given that up. But it's not just that. Obviously, that's the big news here. That's new news here. But also what has happened in the last week is that he has also walked back from renters assistance. And the reason he's saying he cannot expand renters assistance is the $7 billion debt. But because he intends to not fight for taxing the rich, he is not going to address the question of debt, because that's always there. It's, how do you pay for the needs of working class people when all the money is in the hands of a few billionaires and multimillionaires? There is no way out of fighting them to at least tax them. I mean, that's like step number one. We really, what we need to do is to build revolutionary movements to take the big corporations and the billionaire wealth into democratic public ownership. But step number one, the bare minimum that any person supposedly standing for the working class needs to fight for is taxing the rich. And he has already now, at record speed, in the month of February, second month of his office, he has already said that. One other thing I want to mention about the Hochul endorsement that he did. She's obviously against taxing the rich. She always was. She never changed her position. And no self-described socialist has any business endorsing someone like her. But it's not only that, Nick. We know she's also a Zionist. She has a Zionist position. She has had a Zionist position for years. And then on top of that, what happened with the nurses' strike? I mean, the nurses' strike is still ongoing. But Kathy Hochul, Zohran Mamdani walk the picket line with these nurses. It's all performative, though. It is all performative, because what else did he do that same week? He went and endorsed Kathy Hochul. And what did Kathy Hochul do? She issued an executive order declaring what they call a quote-unquote disaster emergency in New York City for the hospitals, so that it will make it easier and legal for the hospital bosses to hire scab nurses. And these hospital bosses, yes, the hospital bosses, Nick, they have spent upwards of $100 million hiring scab nurses from out of state to try and undercut the strike. And they've been able to do that because of Kathy Hochul issuing that executive order and then repeatedly renewing that executive order. And so this is the person that Zohran Mamdani has endorsed. This is a straight up Zionist, pro-billionaire politician who has taken explicit actions to try and break the nurses' strike.
Yeah, this is another story I saw, but I didn't have time to cover it before. But this is wild. This is Zohran Mamdani being a scab.
Yes.
Whether it's indirectly, it doesn't fucking matter, man. This is you supporting a scab. You endorsing a scab. So what's the difference between you and a scab? And to me, it's even more morally bankrupt. I don't know why the professional managerial class think it's okay to portray the working class. They're like, hey, you don't understand. I lied to you guys so I can get a job. Hey, bitch, I don't give a fuck. You are betraying the working class, and we're supposed to accept the fact that you are put in this unique position where the only way you can get the job if you sell out a little bit. So I'm glad he brought this up. This is what I wanted to show you guys as well. This is just another failed campaign promise. And people thought I was just being pessimistic and negative for no reason. Because what did I tell you guys? I said so many times covering Zohran Mamdani, I was analyzing his position on foreign policy because I said take everything he wrote down on his domestic agenda and throw it in the trash. Remember when I told you guys that? I said everything that he promising you guys, you might as well throw it the fucking way because he's lying to you. I said that he's lying to people. He purposely misleading and taking advantage of desperate people who are looking for any sign, any positive sign, anything that could make them support someone who don't have the best interest in mind. Mamdani was manipulating and taking advantage of them. And I said, guys, in fact, I think he's a lying bullshitter. I think he's a bullshitter for the fact that he even lying about these things to take advantage of people's desperation. And it was clear to me that he wasn't going to do it because he made it clear that he wasn't going to defund the NYPD. So if you're not touching the NYPD police budget and you're not doing anything to hold the Democrat ruling class accountable on taxing the rich, how are you going to fund these projects? And these are questions that I was asking Kshama, but then they were like, "Oh, Nick, you're just being a negative Nancy." Come on, Nick, don't ask legitimate questions about the future power that Mamdani will have to implement his agenda. This will be the last tweet I read. I get your final thoughts. This is one hell of a live stream tonight, my friend. But this is a great post by Dylan. This is where committing to not touching the NYPD budget gets you. When I was a housing attorney, FHEPS was a lifeline for clients at risk of homelessness or in shelter system. Support for the pigs. I like this. Support for the pigs apparently come at a direct financial cost to the NYC's most vulnerable. That was in response to Zohran saying, "Hey man, I would love to do this, but it's not in our budget. It's not in your budget because you already pledged to maintain the NYPD in order to keep people like Jessica Tish happy, to keep the Zionist regime happy." So that is scratching the surface of Zohran betrayals, and it's only going to get worse. How is it possible that his first 2 months are this bad? It's like the first 2 months is supposed to be the best time. That's supposed to be the time with the DSA celebrating. You didn't get that. Once again, just another example of massive labor of the left being wasted and the resources of the left being wasted just to elect a guy who's going to govern just as a standard liberal Democrat, explaining austerity to their people. So, Kshama, thank you for joining us tonight. I want to give you final thoughts on Zohran. Anything else you want to promote? I definitely need to come out to Seattle sometime this year because I would love to help out the campaign on the ground. You guys know I'm a strong supporter of Kshama Sawant, and I'm a big advocate of building a movement to counter the Epstein decadent capitalist class. Like now, there's so many people who are just in dismay over what was revealed in the Epstein files, how criminal our society actually is. People are just desperate looking for an option. Like people are looking for a third party option. That's why it's disgusting to see people run counter to that. People are looking for a militant option to hold these people accountable. And Kshama is just one small part of that. And that's why I'm at. Like anyone who's coming at this at an anti-imperialist, socialist angle, even if we don't 100% line on, even if you don't love the Chinese Communist Party the way I do, like even if I can't convince you to love and respect Putin the way I do, anyone who's trying to fight this Zionist pedophile capitalist class, I believe we need to form coalitions with, which is why I have Kshama on. I talk to people from the ACP. I talk to people from the Green Party. I bring anti-imperialists with vastly different worldviews together, trying to build this movement. So I'm trying to do my part. So Kshama, I definitely see myself coming out to Seattle, like as the campaign get closer, maybe like the weeks leading up to the campaign or the election. I definitely want to come down and help. I definitely want to do something materially to help inform my labor more than just last year. So that's coming. Maybe sometime this year we can come up with a plan. But make sure you guys support Kshama. I am a supporter of Kshama. We align on way too much, and I think we have potential to build something very powerful. So I'm a strong supporter of Kshama. So thank you for joining. I know there's a longer stream tonight, but it's been a while since we chatted. So hope you guys enjoy the stream. But Kshama, I'll give you last thoughts. Anything you want to plug, promote, any final thoughts you just have in general. It's always a pleasure talking to you, my friend.
Likewise, it's always a pleasure. And yes, it had been a while. We had a lot to talk about. And we didn't even get into the Epstein files, which, there's so much to talk about there. If you don't mind, I just wanted to note one thing from the Epstein files. I mean, obviously, there's so much that's shocking, but also not surprising. Just some of the quotes from Richard Branson, the billionaire. It's like, look at this. Dear Jeffrey, it was really nice seeing you yesterday. As anytime you're in the area, I'm trying to cut short. I don't want to read all of it. Anytime you're in the area, I would love to see you as long as you bring your harem. I mean, the way these people speak about this. And then he says, you slipped up. I think if Bill Gates was willing to say that you've been a brilliant advisor to him, that you slipped up many years ago by sleeping with a 17-and-a-half-year-old woman and were punished for it, and that you've more than learned your lesson and have done nothing that's against the law since. And yes, as a single man, you seem to have a penchant for women, but there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, the way these people talk, I mean, it's one of the things that the Epstein files have revealed is that all the oppressions in society, sexism, sexual violence, the predatory effects of the system that women face, all of this is part and parcel of capitalism. You cannot fight to end sexual violence if you're not fighting against capitalism itself. It has to go hand in hand. And I think the Epstein files do reveal some of that aspect of that. And obviously that's a longer discussion. But just in closing, first of all, I wanted to say, Nick, thank you so much for having me. It had been a while and we had a lot to talk about. I'm always happy to come and have our conversations. I hope we can do that again soon. And yes, we absolutely need you to come to Seattle. And let's make a plan for whenever it's convenient to you. The election is on the first Tuesday of August. So we need people to come out here.
I'm thinking like I might just bring my computer because like I can stream from Seattle. Like, I'm thinking like maybe I'll stay for like a week, like help campaign. I don't know. I've just been these are the kind of things I've been brainstorming, Kshama. We can talk more in detail later. But I'm thinking like maybe I'll just bring my laptop stream from Seattle, like because like I really want to do everything I can to help.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And in fact, let's time your visit to when we're doing a town hall. Like we're trying to do a town hall once a month. Occasionally we're doing actually more than once a month. Actually, in February we're doing more. Like I said, we already had a meeting in February, but we're going to do another one on February 22nd, which I mentioned, the mass meeting for a general strike, because clearly people are hungry to understand why is the labor leadership not organizing a general strike? What does it actually take to do it? We're the only campaign. We're the only campaign, and Workers Strike Back is the only organization. I mean, obviously individuals we are talking about it, but Workers Strike Back is the only organization, and my congressional campaign is the only congressional campaign that is talking about any of this, let alone fighting for all of this. And also all the things that we saw about AOC and Mamdani, I mean, they are a grim reminder that Democrats are not a solution. The Democrats are not a lesser evil. The Democratic Party, as the Republican Party is one of the two parties, most powerful parties of global capitalism. And the reason I'm mentioning this specifically now, Nick, is that I want all your viewers to get involved in our campaign, because we have huge potential. We have an actual chance at winning. We have an actual chance to win, but that means we have to be one of the top 2 vote getters in the primary. And that is going to be hard, because it's possible, but it's going to be hard because we know the ruling class is going to be completely against us. They are going to pull out every trick in the book like they always have. And yet we have won 4 elections of the city council. So do not buy this Kool-Aid from Zohran Mamdani that you cannot win the election without making rotten deals, backroom deals with the Democratic Party. I never made one backroom deal, and I never betrayed the working class, and we won 4 elections. So it is possible to do it, but it's only possible if tens of thousands of people get involved, which has been true of every election. And this election, even more so, because this is Congress, okay? If we are elected, Nick, we will be the first ever revolutionary socialist elected to the US Congress. I mean, it will be a political earthquake internationally, which is why the US ruling class will do everything in their power to stop us from winning, which in turn is why working class people must do everything in our power to win this election. Because as we all know, this election is not about building my career. It is about winning a breakthrough victory for the working class. Because if we can win this position in US Congress, it will be an absolute watershed moment for us to be, use that office as a vehicle to build movements. I've already pledged that if I'm elected, I will turn my congressional inauguration into a mass rally of 10,000 people in Washington, D.C., and we will immediately launch movements to shut down ICE, to end all US military aid to Israel, and to win free healthcare for all funded by taxing the rich. And the reason I mentioned the Democrats, progressive Democrats specifically, is that as our campaign grows, we should expect the Democratic Party to start getting worried. And they might think that, okay, Adam Smith, my opponent, the 29-year Congress member, his hands are dripping in blood. He is an absolutely horrendous guy. He voted for the Iraq war. He voted for the genocide. He has voted for the bailing out the banks after the Great Recession. He voted to create ICE. He has voted to fund ICE. His record is horrendous. If they see us inching closer to him, it's possible they will run quote unquote progressive Democrat and tell people that, if Adam Smith is unpalatable for you, then vote for this Democrat, don't vote for Kshama. We need people to be crystal clear. It doesn't matter which Democrat gets elected. You've seen when Democrats get elected, they fall in line with the pro-capitalist, pro-imperialist agenda. That is why no Democrat is worth electing. We actually need to win this election for revolutionary socialism.
Yeah, and I'm definitely down to help however I can. It was great talking with you, Kshama. I appreciate you spending a bit of time with me tonight. I'm going to quickly read these super chats. I almost forgot. I don't want to disrespect our audience here. So let me quickly read these and we get out of here. Big shout out to Dark Matter Zombies. I appreciate the substantial super chat here, supporting my labor. Thank you for having the true hero on. I agree with that. We need Kshama in Congress to turn it into Congress. We are all Palestinians now. Absolutely. I appreciate the support. I'm I'm strongly in support of Kshama and her campaign. You guys know that. Sad truth is U.S. people, the United States people, are the most propagandized in history. Working class won't mobilize to it. It affects them directly. This is why ICE gets threats with general strike and Gaza still being bombed and starved. Our community always great super chats. I think we got another one from him. Turn the propaganda against the ruling class, wrap class consciousness in the American flag and frame it as a patriotic movement. I do like describing the act of taking care of your neighbors as patriotic. And you guys see I always destroy the false, toxic version of patriotism that many people believe that they believe it's patriotic if you support the wars of John Bolton. They think that makes you a patriot. I think there is legitimate benefit for us reclaiming that. I don't like flag thumping. I don't like symbolism. Like George Carlin says, symbolism is for the simple-minded. But there is benefit of us for reclaiming what it actually means to be a patriot. You're not a patriot if you're okay with your neighbors dying without health care. You know what I mean? You're not a patriot if you support paramilitary troops executing United States citizens. So I know some people don't like it. I know some people don't like, oh, we shouldn't be talking about patriotism. I agree more with the ACP people on this. I do think there's value in us redefining what that means, because the capitalist class, the imperialists, they are traitors. And I think there's a value in us communicating that. Just a few more here, Kshama. I appreciate the support for the Solidarity Super Chat there. Just two more I saw here. We shouldn't reward imperialism. You're literally from the USA. Not only is she from the USA, she serves in the most violent institution in modern history. You know what I mean? I'm not one of those people that like to blame a waiter. That I don't like to blame some person working at Waffle House for U.S. imperialism. I'm not that kind of person. You know what I mean? But if you work for the fucking United States Congress, the most violent institution in human history, how about you shut up? You know what I mean? How about you? I agree with that. Last one, and we can wrap up. Thanks for $2. You and Butch must win. I help if I can. I told you guys, I'm supportive of anyone who's anti-capitalist who's running outside the Democratic Party on principle. Like you would have to have such an insane, batshit crazy position on something else for me not to support you in those situations. Like if you supported NATO, like in the Ukraine war, I'm good. I'm not supporting you on that. But there's there's no reason for us not to be supportive of people who are principally anti-Zionist, anti-capitalist, who shares a large part of our value system against this capitalist elite. I'm a believer in building parties. I'm a believer in building movements. I don't believe social change just happens. Like you hear the people like, man, I'm against political parties. I'm against political parties. Nigga, how you think change happens? By magic? I believe that change happens if we put our labor into it and we build movements, build connections with people. And that's what I'm going to do. Even if we don't agree and line 100% on every issue, that's not what most important is about where you stand on working class liberation. So, Kshama, thank you for joining me tonight. I give you the last word. How can they support your campaign? You get the last word tonight.
Thank you so much, Nick. Yeah, as I said, I hopefully people were watching when I was talking about why it's so crucial for us to win this election, because it is about winning a breakthrough victory. It's not about winning a seat in Congress. It's about winning a breakthrough victory to completely change the course of history. And that's what we did in Seattle. If people who are watching this have not heard, we live with one elected office in Seattle. We completely changed the politics in the city, and in fact, nationally, because we won the first $15 minimum wage here for a major city. We actually were able to inspire movements nationally, and tens of millions of people, working people, got massive raises because of the victory that we won here. And those wage increases have been a crucial lifeline for working class people who are getting relentlessly pummeled with cost of living increases and skyrocketing rents. And in fact, that wage that we won in 2014, it has now become the highest minimum wage in all of the nation, and it's at $21.30. We defeated billionaires like Jeff Bezos, and we won the Amazon tax, which funds hundreds of millions of dollars every year for affordable housing. And we won unprecedented renters' rights. So we were able to do this in one city. Imagine what we would be able to do with a congressional position, which will be the first ever challenge to the Democratic and Republican parties in Washington, D.C. It will be an actual challenge to U.S. capitalism and imperialism. So I really urge your viewers to to look at our potential election victory and why they should support our campaign in that light. It is not about one person. It is about actually winning a breakthrough victory for the American and also global working class, and to present in a concrete challenge, not in the abstract, but a concrete challenge to U.S. capitalism and imperialism, which is it, and it will be nothing short of that, which is why we're going to be up against huge opposition, and that is why it is crucial that working people join us. I mean, just to give a sense of how much excitement there already is about this campaign, we have raised nearly $450,000 by working class donations, with a median donation of $25, with donations from every state in the nation and Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico. So if you want to support our campaign, please do. And also know that you are far from alone. We have more than 4,000 donors already to our election campaign, which is way above what our opponent has. I mean, our opponent's Adam Smith's main donor in 2024 was AIPAC. He's being bankrolled by AIPAC, Zionist lobby AIPAC. He's being bankrolled by Palantir, by the health insurance companies, by the war industry, by billionaires like Alexander Karp and Joe Lonsdale. You know, Joe Lonsdale, who wants to bring back public hangings. I mean, these are the people that he's supported by. So I hope people are going to support our campaign and help us win this election. You know, first of all, like I said, we need to get through into the general election, and join us for the mass meeting on Sunday, February 22nd at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. You can go to kshamasawant.org, my first name, last name, .org, and find out all information. And thank you so much again, Nick. It was a really fantastic conversation.
Yeah, Kshama Sawant must win. Thank you for joining me, my friends. Can't wait to join you guys down in Seattle sometime this year. But we will talk again here very soon. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great weekend, my friends. Make sure you guys support on Patreon if you enjoy these kind of conversations, and support Kshama Sawant in her effort to defeat the Zionist ruling class. Thank you guys. Have a great weekend, y'all.